Hey, thanks for stopping by my channel. The purpose of this course is to take you from a beginner to an intermediate level bug bounty hunter. And this course is going to be a compilation of two courses I already have up on my YouTube channel, the beginner bug bounty course and the intermediate bug bounty course. I have compiled them because there have been several requests to put both of these courses in one place. I guess some of you want to bookmark just this one video and come back to it. So I've gone ahead and put both of those courses into this one video to make it a complete beginner, intermediate bug bounty course. And with that, I would appreciate it if you would please like and subscribe. Now let's jump into it. All right, it did not take long for us to come to a crossroads where you get to decide what kind of virtual hosting software you would like to use. There is a free software called VirtualBox. You can download it here. You can download it for a Mac. You can download it for Windows. And I strongly recommend you avoid VirtualBox. I tried using VirtualBox when I first started, and this was quite a while ago, so maybe it is better now. But when I ran VirtualBox, I struggled for months because I did not want to pay any money to have a good virtual machine hosting software. But after it kept on lagging and freezing and I couldn't get HackTheBox to work, I decided I was done with VirtualBox and I was ready to pay money. If you want to avoid paying money and you want to try VirtualBox and maybe you'll have better luck than I did, you can go ahead and download it here and we'll walk through the steps to do that. Or you can run VMware. If you are running on Windows, you will download it here, and I'll have this linked in the course resources. You will download the VMware workstation, and you will run this as your virtual machine hosting software. VMware is my go-to. I still use VMware. You get 30 days free. So if you're struggling with VirtualBox, you can try VMware for free for 30 days. And you can run your Kali Linux machine on VMware and give it a test. I have never had any problems with VMware, and it has worked really well for me. So it is the one I recommend. So you can download it for Windows or you can download it for Mac. I am running a Mac and I run VMware Fusion because that's VMware's software for Macs. And so this is your decision. You can choose which one you would like and begin installing it in the next video. All right, if you have chosen VirtualBox as your virtual machine hosting software, may the force be with you and you have much better luck than I did. If you are on Windows, you will go ahead and download for the Windows. If you are on Mac, you will download for a Mac. I have already downloaded VirtualBox. It is really simple. You click download. You will extract the download, and then this is what you will be brought to, a VirtualBox manager. I have a really old machine that's actually deleted off my Mac now. You can see the last time I ran VirtualBox was in 2020. And I downloaded this virtual machine from Kali Linux. And so what you'll do is this will be listed in the course resources. However, you will come over here, you will go virtual machines. It will ask you, do you want to use VirtualBox or VMware? And you will choose VirtualBox for the sake of this video. It is quite a large download. I am not going to download it because I am running out of space on my Mac. But you will hit download. It will save to your downloads if you're on a Mac. I'm assuming it'll save to your downloads if you're on a Windows as well. And then once it is finished downloading, you will open up your file that it is in. You will extract it because I think it downloads as a zip. And once you have done that and you are ready to open it, you will right click on the VirtualBox image that has finished downloading. You will right click on it and it'll say open with, and you will click open with VirtualBox and it will bring you to this page. It might actually even try to open the machine and start it, and you can let it run and then shut it down. You'll want to shut it down because there's a few things you need to set up on it before you do within this settings tab. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, when you launch your box or it automatically starts, you will need to click I copied it when you are prompted. It's going to ask you where the machine came from. I forget the other option. All I remember is you need to click I copied it. And if you save this machine on like an external hard drive or something, and your computer, either your Windows software or your Mac, whatever you're running, crashes, you can always grab your old virtual machine off that external hard drive, and when you put it back onto VirtualBox, it's going to ask you the same thing, and it'll ask you where the image came from, and you will select I copied it. So remember to select that. Also, you can, instead of right clicking and opening it, you can come in here and name your Linux box that you've just downloaded from Kali Linux. You can go to the place where your VirtualBox is stored, and you can click on it, and then you can open it. I don't recommend that way because it is more challenging, and I remember struggling to get that to even work. It's easier just to open with, let the box start to open, either let it open all the way up, and your default credentials to log in is Kali is your username, and Kali will be your password. However, shut it down once that's happened because it will begin to lag. If you don't, you'll need to come into your settings, and this will matter based on how much RAM space you have and how many CPUs. We will go over to our settings. We will want to adjust our RAM to as much as you can dedicate. I think I do somewhere around 8 to 10. I am really not sure how much I give it. I know that it's a lot, especially on VirtualBox. It's going to eat all the RAM you give it. It will also eat all your CPUs. I typically dedicate 4 to the machine. I think the one that I work on the most, I might even dedicate 8. I might even have more than that. I'm not really sure. But the more CPUs you can dedicate, especially to VirtualBox, the better, because it will use all of what you give it. And if you don't have a lot, that's okay. You just might not be able to run Hashcat, which we will get to way later in this course. I think it'll be somewhere around 8 hours into this course. You might struggle running Hashcat, but that's okay. You will be able to copy everything as I have ran it for us in the videos. And that is it for setting it up. You'll hit OK. I'm going to close out of it, and then you will launch the box. You can right click on it, and then you can go to start, and you will start the machine. You will log in, and I will see you on the inside. All right, if you have chosen VMware, this video and setup is for you. If you have chosen VMware, I think you have chosen wisely. So what you will do, I am running VMware Fusion, so I would come down here and I would download the VMware Fusion player. I have already downloaded it, so I am not going to do that again. Once it downloads, it will save into your downloads, and you will extract the zip if it is in a zip folder, and then you will drag it on a Mac, you'll drag it into your applications, and then you can launch your VMware Fusion software. If you are on Windows, I actually have a Windows box over here, which I have not downloaded VMware Fusion on, or VMware on, but I'm assuming it is going to be done just the same. You would come into VMware, you would come down to Windows, you will download it, you will extract it if it downloads into a zip, and you will then launch that, and you will have something that looks similar to this. And it'll look, here you go, it'll look like this, basically exactly what I have here. And then from here, we are going to put our virtual machine into our virtual hosting software. So we will go to Kali Linux. This is also linked in the course resources. We need a virtual machine, so we shall select that. If you chose VMware, you will download right here. It's 2.3 gig. I am fairly certain this is zipped, and you will need to unzip it. There's several different ways to unzip it, and you will have to go about unzipping it however you choose. Once it is unzipped, you can actually go into the downloads where it is saved, and you can just click on that unzipped image, and you can just drag it over here and you can drop it, or you can right click and then select open with VMware Fusion. One thing to remember, when you open it, it's going to say, where did this image come from? And you're going to say, I copied it. It's important to click I copied it, or you will not be able to get the image to open. Now that we have the image on our box, we will want to adjust our settings. You can right click and go to settings. We will want to have our memory really high. I went ahead and just put as much RAM as I could dedicate towards it, and I have 5 cores dedicated to the machine as well. You will want to dedicate as much as you can spare. If you don't have a lot, that's okay. You won't be able to run Hashcat, as we will see later on. I have tried to run Hashcat with less cores and less RAM, and it would just error out and say that there is not enough space or memory dedicated to the machine. And that's fine if you don't have that. I will be able to show you all of the cracked passwords and hashes as we go through this course. But the more you have to dedicate to your machine, you will be able to faster crack passwords and hashes. But this will not be something that we encounter until at least 8 hours into the course. So you will likely forget about this, and you can just run it with however much space you have to dedicate. And with that, your default credentials, when you launch your box, you'll right click and you can resume, or it'll say start if it's in a powered off state. And your default credentials will be the username Callie and the password Callie. And with that, I will see you on the inside. Okay, welcome to this section on note-taking. This is going to be really short, but also really important. One of the things you will need to do as a cybersecurity professional is be able to take really good notes. I like to use OneNote. There are other people who like to use flowcharts. I have tried the flowchart thing. It doesn't really work for me, but hey, Jason Haddix likes flowcharts and he is at the top of the game. So you can try out some kind of flowchart management system or OneNote, but you will need to have some kind of note-taking system. Otherwise, you will just continue to check the same things over and over by accident because you can't remember what you've checked on a web app or what checklist you have ran through. So note-taking is something you will need to do and be really good at. So consider note-taking and thinking through what is the best method for you, and maybe even do some researching and find the style of note-taking that works best for you. And I think we'll go ahead and just stop it there with the note-taking and dive into our first informational section. I'm going to be installing a few tools here, and it won't take very long. But the first thing I want you to install is gedit, and I already have installed it just like this. So if I hit enter, it will pop open this little text pad for me here, and I can write information and create files. I like to use it instead of Nano or V or Vim because it's just a lot easier to move around. I can actually use my mouse to click around inside of the text file. So the way to install this is type in sudo apt install, just like this, gedit. You'll hit enter your password, and it will install for you. And then the second thing I want you to install is Sublister. So if we type in Sublister like this, not like that, like this, you can see that it doesn't do anything for me. But if I type in sudo apt install and I hit enter, type in your password, it will go ahead and install Sublister for me. And now if I type in Sublister like this, it will turn blue and now be ready for me to use. And we will install Fuff. I don't think Fuff, it is already on the Callie box, so we don't need to install any other tools. Those are the only two we need to install, and we'll go ahead and start looking at how to use the most common tools for the world of bug bounty hunting. One of the most popular tools for finding subdomains, and the way you use it is just type in Sublister, just like this, and then you will type in the domain you want to pull down subdomains for. So we'll type in www. We need actually a -d in here, so we type in -d, and I think we can actually just type in yahoo.com and hit enter, and it will automatically go out and start searching for subdomains for us. One of the important things to know is that when it pulls down subdomains for us, not all of them are going to be in scope, and you should definitely check to make sure they're in scope, and some of them may not even be owned by your target. So in this case, we're looking at Yahoo, and some of these might not even be owned by Yahoo. So one of the things I like to do is, if I was to open up this URL right here, and at the bottom I like to look to make sure that it says it is owned by Yahoo. And so this is Sublister. This is a great way to pull down subdomains. There are other tools and other ways to use this, but this is one of the most common. And from here, we can actually brute force other endpoints with Fuff, and we'll go ahead and check that out. So with Fuff, this is one of my favorites is because when it brute forces, it goes so quickly. I actually like to slow it down, or if I do run Fuff, I always use a VPN just in case my IP gets banned. I can just change my VPN to another IP address and continue on. But I usually do slow down Fuff so that way the server doesn't think I'm trying to DOS it. So when you use Fuff, it would look something like this. We can type in fuff-help and look at the usage. We're shown right here. You have to have a word list. And then there's some other flags in here and the URL. So what we would do is use fuff-w, and then we can go, I think we can type in user, share, word list. What are my options? Derb / small.txt. We'll use this word list, and then we would type in https www.yahoo.com, and then we'd type in fuzz like this. If we hit enter, we need to have our -u right here, and if we hit enter, it'll automatically start brute forcing for us right here where we put fuzz to see if there are any extensions that we can find. A few things to note. We use the -p right here for the delays. And you can also use the filter options right here in order to filter out. Let's say we wanted to filter out by a response code, or we wanted to match a response code. We could get rid of these 302s right here, or anything that has one line or let's say one word, and we can just filter out with Fuff that way. So that way the output doesn't go quite so quickly. So we can just come up here and we could say FL. So we're going to filter out. We need a flag -FL, and where we could filter out by the line right here, and we can say anything with one line, don't return it to us. And now you can see it running, and what is brought back has more than one line on it. And there's other ways to filter these out, and you can go ahead and play around with Fuff. It is one of my favorites. The other one I like to use is Derb because it's really simple. You just would type in Derb, and then you would type in the URL that you want to attack, and then you just hit enter, and it'll automatically start testing for you. So those are my two favorites. I like to use Derb if I just need to do something quick and simple. If I'm looking for speed, I will use Fuff. All right, there is something called Google Dorks or Google Dorking, and I'm not really sure why it's called this. So if you know, you can leave a comment and let me know why it's called Google Dorking, because that just seems like a really weird name to me. Maybe I could Google it and find out. But the thing about Google is pretty much everything on the internet is stored inside of Google, the search engine. You just have to know how to look for it. Google is constantly crawling the internet and storing new files, new URLs, and more information into their database. You just have to know how to find it. So let's say I was looking for a doctor named Charles Hodge. What I could type in is just Charles and then type in Hodge. We'll go with Charles Hodge right here. This is what I was going to use. And we hit enter. This was Princeton Theological Seminary's president, but this is not the, let's say, MD that we're looking for. What you can do is just add quotations and put in MD, and now everything that comes back will be medical doctors. Or you can put in literally anything you want into these quotations, and it will find it. So an example of this is if we say we want HackerOne, it'll pull up HackerOne. And let's say we want the HackerOne programs. If we type this in, it'll pull it up for us anyway. But what we could do is add in the quotes just like this and say the programs and hit enter. And now everything that comes back will have to have programs inside of the search. And so this is one of the ways to use the Google Dorks. You can also do this with GitHub as well. When you are searching through the GitHub code, you can type in a specific word. Like let's say we're looking for HackerOne, and then we type in quotes and we want to look for an API, it'll pull down what has an API, and then you can come in here and you can look to see if they have an API that you can use. So using quotes within Google will help you narrow down your search and what is brought back. And as I mentioned, this is something that you should do within GitHub as well when you're searching for, let's say, API keys or passwords or something of that nature. And now we're going to move on to Burp. Okay, in this video, we are going to be setting up our proxy Burp. And right now, if we just hit enter on Google, it loads just fine for us. But when we set up our proxy, this is going to not work, and I'm going to show you how to set it up. So we will come over to these three lines. We'll go down to settings, scroll all the way to the bottom, click settings, go manual proxy configuration. We're going to go 127.0.0.1 because this is the default with port 8080 on Burp. So if we say OK to this and we come over to Google Now and we try and run it, it's going to tell us the proxy server is refusing connection and we will need to open up Burp. And if this is the first time you've opened Burp, there might be quite a few things you have to click through in order to actually get it to open. But once you get it to open, it will look something like this. So if we come to proxy and options, you will see right here, this is what we have set up. And we're going to need to import these certificates. So you'll click this top one, next, and we are going to go next. We're going to open up file. I guess we're going to select. We're going to have to, and in the file that we select, we'll go to our desktop. This is a great place to store it. So we'll name the file cert.ca and we can save this. It will save to our desktop. We'll say great. And now that this has saved, we're going to need to add this into our security. I've already added it in, so I'm not going to add it in again, but it'll look just the same. You'll scroll down once you've gone 3 lines to settings. We'll just show this again. Settings, privacy and security. Scroll down, that was too far. Scroll down to certificates. I guess it's all the way at the bottom. You will click view certificates and then you're going to import and we're going to go to our desktop and we're going to say we want all files and then we're going to save the cert that we just opened. You will click open and I have already installed it. So we'll say okay, okay. And now when we come back over here to Google, we'll need to turn our proxy interceptor off. We can test it to make sure it works, and it does. I accidentally clicked one of the little tabs down here. So if we say Google, we are now running as we need to, and if we need, we can intercept a request just like that. But we're not going to get into that just yet. So that is how you set up Burp, and we will continue on. Okay, we are going to be starting our URL portion of this course, just what exactly we can learn from the URL, what we can do in the URL, which is actually quite a bit. The URL is actually something that you can learn about how the website functions. You can look, sometimes you can see information, personal information, sensitive data can be stored there. So for example, if in this URL it had an ID of my name or my email address, those are things that you wouldn't necessarily want in a URL, or specifically if a password was in there. Those are things that you could actually report if you had sensitive data in there. But we're basically going to be looking at how we can manipulate the URL to our advantage and what we can do specifically with pages. So I remember when I first started down this path of wanting to learn web app pen testing, sometimes you'll go to a capture the flag website and it will be just a blank page. And I remember coming to the blank pages and thinking, oh my goodness, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. But for you, we've already gone through the recon portion of this course, and you know to go to Derb and just start looking for directories. And then also we're going to be looking at the source code. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but it's something that can be really helpful, and I'll show you why. So I made this very, very basic HTML website. What I'm about to show you is something that Derb would probably find, but if it doesn't, you can kind of see how this is going to work. You can come in here and you can just go page 1, and then you can go, okay, well, if there's a page 1 is there a page 2? And then you hit enter. Oh, page 2 is blank. And then you go page 3, and then you hit enter, and we hit a forbidden page. And so if we have this forbidden page, there's something on it that we're not supposed to be able to access. Well, how can we get there? And this is when remembering looking at source code can be really helpful. And so we can come over here and we can go view page source. And you can look through and see just how basic this really is. And you can see that we have something hidden, and you can go, there is this directory or this file for more information. And so you can come here and you can copy this and you could paste it in up here. Another way to come across this is you can see that this is hidden. We're going to cover this in more detail as we go through the course. But as you go to the source page, one other thing that's really helpful to look through is to right click and just go inspect. You can inspect what is on the page. It's basically the same thing that we saw was the source, but you can see where this is hidden. Sometimes you will have login pages and there will be hidden fields that you can open up and try and manipulate. And you can just actually type this into text and it'll actually show up on the page as plain text. And so we have this file here. If you remember, we had page 3 was forbidden, and we're not able to enter into it. But we can try. This HTML actually won't be on any websites. I just didn't take the time to remove it, and so we'll ignore it and act like it isn't there. But if we remember from this right here, we have this edit 3, which I'm guessing is our page 3. And then this is the forbidden page where you can access files. Now, we're actually going to go and practice something very similar to this. And when you do this, what you're going to need to do is go to Google. I would encourage making a new Gmail account and then going and signing up on HackerOne. And then we're going to be using Hacker 101 to practice what we just saw for us to be able to gain some practice. It is a CTF. Okay, we are going to set up our HackerOne account. You can actually come into Google and type in Hacker 101. This is going to be their capture the flag practice area, and you can actually click this, and what will happen for you, I've already logged in, but what will happen for you is it's going to say, it'll bring you to a login page. Once you reach the login page, you will have to go and create your own account with HackerOne. And once you create your account with HackerOne, you can navigate back to Google, type in Hacker 101, and then click on the Hacker CTF, and then it will bring you back to login. You will click the blue button, and then you will log in, and it will bring you to this page. And if it doesn't bring you to this page, you have a navigation bar very similar to this one, and you will just click on CTF, and then you will be at this page. But you're going to have to register in order to reach this page. And then what I want you to do as we begin working with actual vulnerable websites is go ahead and click go. This is going to be the very first challenge I have for you. Once it loads, you're going to be brought to this page. And the way HackerOne has set up their training program is that you will have flags, and then it'll have a bunch of random numbers. And once you reach that flag, you will know you have found the area of the website that you were not supposed to find or is supposed to be vulnerable. And so with that, I want to have you pause this video and see if what you've learned in the last lesson, you can figure out how to find the flag all on your own. So with that, pause the video and give that challenge a go. Okay, if you got it, that is great. If not, I'm going to go ahead and reveal to you how to find this specific flag. Before you do, I would challenge you to go back and watch the previous video and just see the steps that I walk through, and then go ahead and come back here and give it a try, because I am certain with what we have covered, you can find this flag on your own. So the way we find this very first flag is by coming in here and just right clicking and then going to view page source. And then we can look at the page source and we can see what is in here. And it has a background image, and then here it is, background.png. Just a little bit ago, actually came in here to try this, and my guess was this is going to be a file that we were not supposed to be able to access. And so copied this, came over and pasted at the end of our URL. We're going to paste it and then hit enter, and then here is our flag. We're going to move on into the next video, and I'm going to help you get set up on what you're looking for, and then I'm going to turn you loose and see if you can find the next flag on your own. Okay, we are ready for challenge number 2. We are going to come into the first easy program we can enter. We're going to only find one of these 4 flags. We'll actually come back later. We're going to go ahead and click go and pull open this vulnerable website, and I'm going to turn you loose once this loads, because everything that we have done so far, that we have covered, should give you everything you need to know to find the flag that we're looking for in this specific capture the flag. And so with that, I want you to go ahead and click around in the website and see if you can find the flag. And so we can go ahead and pause the video now and see if you can solve the first challenge. I believe we've covered most everything you need to know to find this flag. And so the first thing that we would do is just start clicking around, and you could maybe make a page and see what happens. We've got a page here. We're on page 9. And so we can go back, we can edit this page, and we can see we can edit our page 9. We can go back, we can click on the markdown test and click the button. It doesn't really do anything. Can come in and view the page source. And we can look around. There's not really a whole lot here for us. And so we can go back and we can go to home, we can go to testing, and just as we continue to click around, a couple of things that stand out to me in our URL is that we have this page. So we can come into, let's just go into the page that we created. We can come in here and just go page 1, page 2, page 3, not found. Well, we know there has to be at least 9 because we have created page 9. So we'll go to 4, 5, and then we hit the forbidden page. If you remember in the example that I showed earlier, we have seen a forbidden page before, and then we'll keep going. We'll go all the way up to page 9 and look at every single one, every single option we have, because we know that's how far we are as we've created. So we have all of these, and then page 9 should be the one we created. So what page was that was forbidden? It was page 5. So how do we access this? We can go view page source. It says we don't have permission, and it is forbidden. Well, there is another way to view this page. If you remember from the example website that I made and showed earlier, you would know that we can try and get around this because we have the option to edit this page. And so if we edit this page and we know we can edit the page that we made, maybe we can edit the page that was forbidden. So we can come in here and put in 5, and there it is. There's the flag. So I hope you found this. I think by now we've covered everything needed to find a flag like this in the URL. I have a few more challenges for us to go ahead and try. They're going to be on a website called Over the Wire, and I will actually help you navigate to that page and get logged in. We don't actually have to make a user or create a user, which is very nice, and so it's very easy to access and to practice on. And so with that, I'll see you in the next video and we'll get that all set up. Okay, we are ready for a few more challenges. And so we're going to go ahead and head over to a website called Over the Wire, and you can click on it or type it in. And we're going to go ahead and click on Nodus. This is where we're going to be working out of. We can click on that and it will pull it open. And this is where we're going to get started. I'm going to go ahead and open a new tab to keep this one open. So we're going to start on level 0. Password is going to be level 0. And so all we have to do is copy this URL and paste it in and then hit enter. And our password is going to be Nodus 0 and Nodus 0. And then we'll hit enter. And every time you find a new flag, you will come up here and you will change the 0 to a 1, the 1 to a 2, the 2 to a 3, and it will prompt you and say username. And so we have Nodus 0 right now. The next username will be Nodus 1, and then the flag that you find will actually be your password for the next level. We have gone over everything needed to find this first flag, and I want you to go ahead and try and do that now. Okay, hopefully that went well for you and you were able to find the first flag. But before we get into that and get going too far, there's one thing I forgot to mention in the recon portion of the course, something that we will use in Nodus and you will use later on in your bug bounty hunting career, is the robots.txt file. So you can have, the way we get to that is you just hit a / and then you hit robot.txt and then you hit enter, and it will take you to a page. This one doesn't have one set up, but it'll take you to a page that doesn't allow search engines to find. And so sometimes websites will have files that they are hosting online that they don't want Google displaying, and so they'll have a disallow or allow for Google and Bing and Yahoo and other search engines to go through and crawl their website, and it will go through that robots.txt file and will say do not allow Google or Bing or Yahoo to crawl through these files. And so it's always a good thing to check the robots.txt and roll through and see what's allowed and what's disallowed, and then visit those disallowed files and see what's in there, or those domains or directories that we find. And so with that, we'll go ahead and solve this challenge. And so I hope by now you know one of the first things we do is to go ahead and view the page source, or you can inspect the element. Either one works. I like to view the page source because it gives us a more complete view. And so one thing I want to mention about the Nodus levels is everything inside this head tag, which will be from here to here, doesn't have anything to do with the level. And so sometimes you'll see the password for the previous level up here, which the next one would be right here. This is our password for this challenge. And so I hope you found this, and next time if you view the page source, this password will be right here. And just so you know, it's inside the head tag, and so it's not actually anything that's going to be relevant to us. And so here's the password for the next level. So you can go ahead and copy this, and the way we get to the next level, if you remember, is come up here, go to Nodus, change this to 1. It will prompt us for the username, which is going to be Nodus 1. And then our password, which we just found in that flag, and we hit enter, and that takes us to the next level. And if you want to go ahead and try and solve this challenge, you can do that now. I'm going to stop this video and we will solve this challenge in the next lesson. And so this one says that we are not allowed to right click. It's been blocked. However, for me, if I go ahead and I use my keyboard to right click, if I hold down Control and hit the right click, then it works for me. And so my right click is available through using control. And then I do the exact same thing. I go to view page source. And then once in here, you can look through our code, and then they've got it commented out. The password for Nodus 2 is, and then here's our password. Now this may seem really easy, but you will actually find people who have put in these comments in the code of a username or a password or an API key, and they just have forgotten to delete it. So they'll put them in here while they're developing the site or while they're writing their code, and they need to remember their username, their passwords, other sensitive information, and you will actually come across it just being hard-coded right onto the site. And so that's why we check the code, and sometimes you will find you will really find something just like this, a username and a password. These seem very easy, but they're also very practical, and they're something you will come across pretty regularly. All right, this is an update. Since I originally made this video and was saying that developers will accidentally push usernames and passwords, I was working on the back end of a web app, and I accidentally pushed my database username and password to the public GitHub page. So when I say this happens, I mean it. I have done it. I'm sure almost every single developer at some point has pushed something sensitive to GitHub, and it is something to watch out for. So there is my update. And so I guess I shouldn't say pretty regularly. You will come across them. Most people will have already reported these. This is why it's important to be one of the first ones on a site to pick a specific target and make sure you keep up to date what's coming out new on different domains and different subdomains as you continue to work through different programs and your bug bounty hunting. So we'll go ahead and copy this password. We'll come back to our main site. We'll type in Nodus 2, and we will type in Nodus 2 and paste our password. I'm going to not save this. And then here we are again. It says there's nothing on this page. That should give us a clue. Everything we need to know to solve this challenge, we have already covered previously. I think there's a little more to it that will cause us to need our critical thinking skills, but we have covered everything needed to solve this challenge. And so I'm going to go ahead and give this a go, and we'll go over the solution. Okay, how did that go? Hopefully you were able to solve this challenge. I'm actually going to show us a couple different ways that we could solve this challenge, just so that we have a more rounded understanding of how the URL works and how different files and different directories are included into domains. And so with that, I think by now you probably know what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and right click. We're going to view the page source, and we see here's where it says there is nothing on this page. And so we can look through everything in the header, doesn't matter, isn't relevant to us. And so all that's left is this image. And then we have a link. And so what we can do is we can go ahead and copy this, and we're going to paste it into our URL. And so as we paste this, we can go ahead and hit enter and see where it takes us. And when I first solved this, I went and I checked to see if I could inspect the element to see if there was anything else on this page other than this picture, or maybe there was something inside of it that would help us. And when I was looking here at the URL, I noticed that this is a file or an image, and it's inside of a directory called files. Now, if you remember, we can actually go back directories, and you can actually just delete the pixel.png, and it will take you to the previous directory, and here it is. Or we can go back, and just another way to see this is you can do just like we learned in our home folder or in our Kali Linux terminal. You can have your slash, and you can go .. slash, and you can hit enter, and that will take us back one file or one directory. And so we've already viewed the pixel, and now we've been in the parent directory, but now we can see this users.txt. And so we can click this, and it'll take us into a new file. and here's usernames and passwords. And so you have Alice, Bob, Charlie, and then here's Nodus3. So this would be our username, and here is our password for the next challenge. And so we've seen all of this before. We have seen that we can find in our source code things that don't show up, or hidden files or hidden images. And so we've seen this before. So I hope that you would have copied this and have pasted it. And we've also seen what's called the directory traversal, going back or deleting and moving into different files and different directories. And so I hope that you were able to solve this challenge. And so we'll go ahead and get set up for the next challenge. Different ways to install OWASP Juice Shop, and you can watch the next 5 minutes of the video and see which one you think looks easier. I personally think the Try Hack Me OWASP Juice Shop right here is the easiest way, but I'll show you how to download and install OWASP Juice Shop onto your local machine, and you can decide which way looks easiest for you and you would like to run. So I'm going to show both of those to you now. Since I originally have made these videos, OWASP Juice Shop has now been put on Try Hack Me, and it's really simple to just go to Try Hack Me, make an account with them, and connect with their servers, and then open up a Juice Shop box. So you can either install it the way that I have already shown in the previous video, or you can come to Try Hack Me. It is free to make an account and open up OWASP Juice Shop, and from there everything will be the same. You will just click Start Machine and it will open up a machine like this, and then once this gives you an IP address, you can copy it to your clipboard and open up a new tab and paste in the IP address, and it will open up Juice Shop for you. Now I'll let this load and I'm going to cut this, and then I'll show you how to open it up, and everything will look just the same. The way you're going to connect to the box is come up to Access Machine. You're going to click Open VPN, download right here, and it will download your VPN for you. You'll come over here, you will CD into your downloads, and then you will type in sudo openvpn and then whatever your VPN download name is, and you'll hit enter in your password, and it will connect you. I'll go ahead and do this now. Okay, I have connected to the VPN, and now we can copy this, and with our new tab, paste this in, and we will be brought to the Juice Shop web app, and we will accept the cookies, num num, and then we are ready to start. So it's up to you which way you would like to install Juice Shop. Okay, we are going to go ahead and install a vulnerable web app on our local machine. It's a great place to practice. It's put out by OWASP, which is going to be a great resource for you. Rather than just seeing me show you how to do something or listen to me tell you about it, this is going to be a place that we actually go out and practice. And so we're going to download it by going to sourceforge.net, and I'm going to have this linked for you in the resources, and you can go ahead and click on that link, and hopefully I can get it to link directly to the download so that you don't have to navigate through any of this. And this is actually my second time trying to download it, because the first time I downloaded the wrong version, and I don't want that to happen to you. And so hopefully that link will work for you, but if not, you can follow along and I'll show you how to get to the proper download. So we type in Juice and we click on Juice Shop. It was the second one in the search engine. We'll go ahead and click Files. We want 9.1.3, which is right here. We're going to be installing Node 12, and so we need to make sure that we get Node 12, and it's on Linux, which is way down here at the bottom. This is where I went wrong the last time. So we have Juice Shop, Node 12 with Linux. This isn't the right file. That's not the file we want. This one right here is one we want. We want the TGZ. And so we'll go ahead and click that. And after you click this, it might take a little bit for the download to go ahead and take place, but you can go ahead and click it. Your download will begin shortly. And then once it downloads, we'll go ahead and save it, and it will automatically save to our downloads. And so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and I'll resume it once the download has popped up. Okay, there's our download. We're going to go ahead and click Save File, and this is going to save it to our downloads. We can go ahead and click OK. I'm going to go ahead and close out of SourceForge because we no longer need that. And then we're going to navigate over to our terminal. I am in the home directory, so I'm going to go ahead and cd into our downloads. I will ls, and then here's the file we just downloaded. We need to unzip it, so we're going to go ahead and type in tar, and then we will go -xvzf, and then juice shop. Yours isn't going to pop up like mine is because I already typed this in once. And then I'll tab to autocomplete, and this will go ahead and extract all of the content for us. And then once this is finished, you will need to install Node.js and then npm. So we'll go ahead and type in sudo apt get install, and first you'll go Node.js. I already installed it, so I'm not going to install it again, but you'd hit enter, and it'll say, are you sure you want to? You will put in Y, and then you will hit enter, and it will go ahead and finish the download for you. It might take up to a minute because there's a lot of files, especially in npm. And so we'll go ahead and second, you'll do sudo apt get install npm. You'll hit enter. You will enter your password for the first one. You won't have to enter it for the second one. And that will go ahead and run and install npm. And then we're going to ls in our downloads, and we're going to change directories into juice shop. And so we'll cd into our juice shop folder. And every time you run OWASP juice shop and you want to open it up and you want to practice in this vulnerable web app, you will have to cd into your downloads and cd into juice shop, because when you spin up your server, it is going to spin up whatever content is inside the directory that you're inside of. And so now to start npm, we just type npm start, and that will go ahead and spin up our server for us. And it now says our server is listening on port 3000. And then we can come back to our search engine, and you can type, this is what we'll be typing in, just localhost 3000, and you'll type that into your browser, and this is now our vulnerable web app that we're going to be practicing on in the future lessons. But before we get to practicing and seeing what we can manipulate and what vulnerabilities we can find, I want to walk us through a little bit of what we're going to be looking for and how to identify different vulnerabilities and how we're going to use burp to help us find them. But you will notice that if you have burp running and you turn your proxy on and you start clicking on things and you refresh the page, burp is not intercepting anything. It is not working for us. So we need to configure our traffic so that it goes through our proxy, and we're going to do that by going over here, opening a new tab. We will type in about config and hit enter, and I will warn you to proceed with caution because this will change how your browser functions. So you want to accept the risk and continue, and we are going to type in network dot proxy, and this one right here, allow hijacking localhost. We'll click this, and we need it to change to true, and then we can go ahead and close out of this tab. And now if we refresh our page, you can see that our traffic is running through burp, and we are able to intercept the requests. Okay, in the next few videos, we're going to be going through a couple different PowerPoints. The reason for this is I think it's really helpful for us to have some kind of foundation before we begin looking at examples. I think by the time we get through the PowerPoints, you're going to be a little confused and probably still not know what exactly we're looking for or what's going on. But my hope is that with the PowerPoints and then just a couple of examples, you'll be able to start finding some of these bugs on your own. And we're going to be practicing on Hacker 101 as well as Juice Shop, which we just downloaded. And we're going to be looking at how to use burp before we begin looking at trying to exploit some of these vulnerabilities. I think that you will be using burp a lot. And so it'll be helpful to go through and kind of look at how it works and explore just a couple of its functionalities before we begin our exploitation of some of these vulnerabilities. And so we're going to be looking at IDORs, business logic errors, and we are also going to be looking at manipulating user input and cookies and tokens as well as we continue in this course. And so we're going to begin by looking at insecure direct object reference. These are called IDORs. That really doesn't tell us a whole lot, but they're really simple to understand once we get going. These IDORs are going to be just parameters that we can change, so that we can bypass specific functions on a web app. With IDORs or business logic errors, you can bypass payment options, you can reverse payment options so that you're the one getting paid, you can put things into other people's carts. There's a lot of different ways you can use IDORs, and when you're out hunting on your own, you're going to have to be creative because there are many different ways that you can exploit IDORs. You can skip login pages, you can access someone else's account. I personally, one of the first bugs I ever found was being able to write on someone else's social media platforms. It was actually just one platform, and there was just one specific area of the web app where I was able to change an ID and write on someone else's wall of their news feed. And so that is an example of an IDOR. You can also leave feedback on under someone else's name. You can edit another person's blog or their post. And so these are just examples of IDORs and different ways that you are going to be able to find them. And IDORs and business logic errors are going to be the most common bugs out there, which is a great thing because it makes it easier for us to find them, and they are easy to find as well. And so these are something I think we should learn very well, and we are going to have a significant amount of time to practice these because there's actually a lot of different areas and ways to practice these, especially in JuiceShop, which we just downloaded. The best way to test for these, and I think the only way, is by creating 2 different accounts. It is always good to create 2 different accounts because you will have to test in real life against your own accounts. You cannot test on someone else's account, so you can't write actually on someone else's wall. This would be out of scope, or you can't leave feedback as a different user. These will always be out of scope. You don't want to ever mess with the functionality of the application or the people who use it. You will only use your own accounts to test against, and it also makes it easier to use your own account because you already have a second ID number that you can use on your attacker account. So you'll have an attacker account and a victim account that you will use, and so you don't want to test on someone else's account. An example, or a simple example to remember, is to look for hidden inputs. You'll actually see this as well in Burp. When you create an account, it won't say input type hidden, but you will see such as a name and your username, and it will say, are you an admin? And then it'll say value no. An easy way to show one of these errors is just to change this value to yes or true, and you will automatically have admin privileges. And we're actually going to be able to test this out in JuiceShop, something just like this. So you'll get to see this in action. And so we're always looking for parameters and things that we can change to get us somewhere that we should not be. One of the other places that you will find IDORs is in cookies. A lot of times cookies and tokens will host user information. So that's how websites will keep you authenticated. Not all of them, but some of them will be through cookies. And so you will have inside cookies, maybe you'll see something in your cookie like user ID and then a number. And you can change the number to something else to see if you can access that account. For example, if you had 2 accounts, you'd take the user ID of your victim account and you would replace it on your attacker account and see if you can access parts of that application that you shouldn't under another user. If you were getting malicious with this, you would change the value to 0 or 1 and see if you could gain admin privileges to the web app. And another way to test for this is to see if you can log in, save your cookies first or your tokens, and then log out, and then see if you can log in and delete your previous cookies or tokens and then repaste in your new ones and see if they have been terminated or ended. If they haven't, this would be a logic error, because when the session has ended, so should the cookies or tokens. And so you can see what to manipulate and where you can manipulate different things within cookies and tokens as well. These aren't specifically iDoors, but they're similar. They're similar enough that I think they can be included together. And so when we're testing, we're going to be using Burp. This is going to be where we're at the most. Sometimes you will be able to see these in a URL. For example, if we have this example here, www.website.com, and let's say you have an invoice, you just purchased something, and it says your invoice number is 12. In a URL, you can just change this 12 to an 11 and see if you can access another customer's invoice. And if you could, this would be a sensitive information disclosure. It's something you shouldn't be able to access. And that would be a simple iDoor. I think they're easier to test for in Burp because it's all laid out for us, as we'll see in the coming videos. And so also another example would be you can upload images or resumes, like on Indeed, you can upload a resume, and you can see in the URL if you pull your resume. So let's pretend this is Indeed and it says www.indeed.com, and then it's got a slash and it says resume equals 87, and that's your resume. You could change this and see if you could access someone else's image or resume just like you would have with the invoice and see what you can access. But remember, out in the wild, we are testing our own accounts. And so I actually have an example here for us. I pulled off of HackerOne of an iDoor that somebody actually has found. And so we'll walk through exactly how he pulled this off. And so he goes to the website. Remember, creating 2 accounts. He has a victim, logs in as the victim. He creates a blog on the site. He saves it. And then what he ends up doing is going into the victim account or the attacker account, and he does the same thing, makes the blog. And then from there, he clicks the save button and then goes to the edit user profile and saves it, opens up Burp. And then what happens is he can change the ID with the victim's ID. And this would be a clear iDoor accessing something that you shouldn't be able to. And we've seen things similar to this with the URLs earlier in changing URLs. And then he forwards the request to go to the victim's account and the website information. And you can see that it has changed. And so this is an example of an iDoor. I think we'll be able to make this sound a whole lot easier once we're actually walking through them. And so I want to go and talk a little bit more about cookies and the URL and what exactly we can do with them. Then we're going to look at how to use Burp to find iDoors, and then I want to turn you loose and let you try and find an iDoor on your own. In this video, we're going to talk a little more about URLs and what we can do with them, cookies and tokens, and then we're going to look at something called CyberChef, and then we'll move into Burp and exactly how it is going to help us in its functionality. But before we get there, I was talking with my wife and I just said, hey, I think I'm going to have to warn that my PowerPoints are going to be full of errors because I actually made them just for bullet points for myself, and I was going to keep them on my second monitor, and then I realized I didn't have anything to show you and I wasn't just going to have a blank screen. So if you're wondering how can somebody with a PhD have such poor quality PowerPoints, they were originally just my notes, and so I decided rather than sit here and comb through them and go back over it, I will just show you. This is basically what my notes look like when I take notes, and walk you through them just so we can have a better understanding of a few more exploits before we move into Burp. So first, changing passwords. You will actually come across this in JuiceShop when we are practicing and more as we get further into the course. Sometimes you will see a URL that looks similar to this, or in Burp, it will pop up at the bottom of a post request, and we will have something similar to this, like a change password. You will have the username, and then the new password will be stored right here. And in something like this, you could actually grab someone else's username, and on your victim account, try and change the password to it and see if you're able to pull that off. Or you can go ahead and see if you can maybe delete your victim account by, instead of having change password, you'd have delete account or delete user or just delete, and then you can put the username here and you would obviously not have the password. You will also in Burp be able to have delete instead of, you'll have put, post, delete options, and you can try and delete the account through Burp. And if you are unable to, even if you aren't able to pull any of that off, if you have a URL that has a username and a password in it, even if it is encoded with something as simple as base64, this would be an information disclosure. And we'll get to why this would be an information disclosure in just a few slides. We talked about this a little bit in the last PowerPoint, in the last video. If you have a website, something similar to this, which I actually just copied this out of the OWASP guide and the OWASP pen testing guide, as well as another image that we're going to come to here in a second. Sometimes you'll come to something like this. If you are logged out, and you copy and paste in a URL that requires you to be authenticated, and it says authenticated no, and it does not allow you to view the site, you can just change this authentication here to yes or true and see if you are able to access the site and see what you can gain access to. And then we can check the logout functionality. And this is why it is an information disclosure if you have a username and a password in the URL, because it is possible for you to log out on your computer and then close the browser, and you'll be able to open up the browser and it has cached the previous page that you were in, and you can go back into the history and open that page. And if it opens, even if you're not able to go to any other links because you're not authenticated anymore, but if it opens that URL and your username and password is in there, it would be an information disclosure. Or if you log out and you don't close the browser, it's possible to hit the back arrow or the back button and go to the previous page and have the information there. And this can also be more than just information disclosure if you're able to hit the back button after you've logged out and then browse the site again and it re-authenticate you. This is something that's listed in the OWASP guide. It's something that happens. It's not very common, but it's something to check for. And you might be thinking this isn't a very big deal, because that's what I originally thought. Okay, we are going to, in this video, go through some of the functionality of Burp. And so I'm going to go ahead and have you navigate over to Hacker 101 and get into their CTF. And we're going to open up Postbook, and you can go ahead and click go and pull it open. And when you're there, the first page you'll come to will look like this. And so we'll go ahead and come over on Burp. You can turn your intercept on and make sure that you are sending all of your traffic through your proxy by coming over here. We'll go to Preferences, scroll down to Settings, and make sure that you have Manual Proxy Configuration, and then it looks like this. And once you have that done, you can click OK, and your proxy should now be set up to intercept your traffic. And just to give it a test, you can refresh the page and make sure that it pulls through here, and you can forward all of the requests we intercept, or you can just turn it back off and then turn it back on. But we are going to come in here and we are going to sign up. And so we'll go ahead and click sign up, and you can just see what's going on in here. We have our signup.php. You can see it's pulling that from our URL. We have a GET request. We'll forward that, and we'll come back over here, and this is where you're going to make your username. And we can just type in test, and password can be test, and you can submit your query. And then in here you can see your username and your password. And if you wanted to actually try and mess with this and see what we can do with it, we would send it to repeater. So you just right click and click send to repeater. And over here, we can send this request as many times as we would like to. And so in here, we can change the username and click test1 and then send it. And we are getting a 302 in response. So let's go ahead and shut this off and see we have successfully signed up. And I think we actually created the test1 account as well. Yep, so we have made the test account and the test1 account. And while you're in repeater over here, you can see that this would be not a very secure way of submitting these things. You will actually come across this pretty regularly, even on large, very common websites. And you can see what you can do here. You can try and manipulate things and see just what you can do, and maybe type a GET request and change to a different URL and see what response you get over here. There's lots of things you can do. And in repeater, you can send this as many times as you want to the server, and really just try and figure out if you can get anywhere that you shouldn't be with this. And so we're going to go ahead and come back to our proxy, turn it on. Now we are going to just create a post. We'll go hello world, create post. We have a user ID of 5, and remember, every time we see ID, we should be thinking IDOR. What can we change? Where can we go? What can we get with this? And we have the body of the message over here. We have a cookie over here. You could bring this over to CyberChef and see if maybe there's anything in there. If you remember, we just go magic, and then we would paste it in, and you can see we didn't get anything out of our cookie. And so that's okay. We would come back here. We can send this to, it says we get a redirect. You can follow the redirect and then come down here and see what your response is. And it says we need to sign in. So you have to be authenticated. So the cookie is necessary, something that we have to have in order to continue on for authentication purposes. But as you can see, this is kind of how I would just go about testing at the beginning. Just see what I can do with this ID, what I can do with burp with body, see where I can get, where I can go, see what responses come back. And with that, I think I've given you a pretty good clue here with this user ID. There is an IDOR in Postbook. I'm going to give you the challenge now to open up burp, come in, make an account or 2 accounts, and see if you can find the IDOR. Before we go ahead and solve this challenge, I want to introduce you into one more functionality inside burp that is going to be helpful in the future as you're doing bug bounty hunting, and that is the intruder. So right here in intruder, one of the things we could do with intruder is, as we come in here and we just refresh this page, we have this ID of 6. Let's say there are 1,000 different numbers in here. What you can do is send this to intruder, and it will actually go through these numbers for us. So you can come over here and you can go to position, and we will clear this, and you'll highlight this number 6. And what it does is it will go through every number we specify in here and replace that number 6 and then give us back the response. So we can come over to our payload and we can go simple, we can do a simple list, and then we will put in just numbers. We'll do 1 through 10. So you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now we have just a simple list, and we have just the one position, and we're going to go ahead and run through these numbers. And so what you do is you click Start Attack and go OK, and it will automatically replace that for us. And then we can click on these and see what we have in the response. And you can come through and see if we have found anything in here. It says write a new post, my profile. It doesn't look like anything private. This is for my own eyes only. Number 2, and we see the same thing And this one actually has someone put in actual content. And then you can go down to number 3 and you can see how this would make it easier. So you don't actually have to go through and do 1, 2, 3, 4 manually. You can, but you don't have to. And so what we would do if we wanted to get more malicious with this, as we're looking for an IDOR, we can come back into our proxy here and you can turn it off, or you can use burp. I'm going to use the URL just because it's what we're used to, but I would encourage you to actually try this with burp. I'm going to show you how I would do it with the URL, and then you can actually come in here and see if you can run this exploit and find the flag with burp and without using the URL. And so what we do is the exact same thing. You can come in here and you can just go 1, and then somebody posted this. It's not private, it's to the public, and you can come here and you can type in 2, and this actually has the checkbox. Yes, this is my own eyes only. And so this would be something that is not supposed to be seen by everyone, and so this would be considered an IDOR. If this was an actual program, you could report this as an IDOR. And not only that, you can write inside someone else's entry here, and then you can save the post. And in saving the post, I am not actually sure why there are 2 flags, maybe one for writing on someone else's wall and one for the IDOR. I'm actually not entirely sure, but you can see the author was also an admin. So we made it beyond just a regular user and into an admin. And so this is how IDORs work. We're going to be moving from Postbook into JuiceShop. And the way I want to work through the JuiceShop vulnerabilities is by giving you just little hints, maybe telling you what part of the application there is a vulnerability, and then setting you free. And after you have spent a significant amount of time and you're starting to get frustrated or you want a clue, just continue watching the video, and I'm going to work through some of these vulnerabilities step by step. But I want you to give it a shot and try and figure out where the vulnerability is and see if you can solve the challenges on your own. And only if you're really struggling, come back and get another clue and then pause the video again and see if you can figure out the rest of the challenge on your own, kind of like we have been doing. But from this point on, it's going to be a lot more difficult for me to show you very specific vulnerabilities on multiple websites, because at this point, JuiceShop is going to be our main place of working, because there's not a whole lot of options when it comes to practicing specific vulnerabilities and then me showing them to you. So I want to give you clues of where they might be located in the application, and then set you free to try and exploit them, and then only when necessary help you with another clue. And so with that, you can actually continue playing around in Postbook and see just what else you can do in finding IDORs. Okay, we are ready to find our first IDOR on our vulnerable web application. So you can come in here and try and find it on your own, or I can give you a tip on how to get started. If you want to try it completely on your own, you can go ahead and pause the video now, browse the application, intercept your traffic with burp, and see if you can find the IDOR. Your first tip is going to be, we'll find the IDOR in leaving customer feedback under someone else's user. So you can go ahead and try and find that now if you want, or keep playing the video for the next tip. Okay, the next tip is going to be creating an account. I already created one. I figured you didn't want to sit through me creating an account, so you can actually just come up here, click on the account setting, the account tab, go to login, create a login, and once you're logged in, try and find how you can leave feedback as someone else. We are going to go ahead and solve this challenge. If at any time you feel like we have gone far enough and you have enough clues, you can pause the video and try and solve it on your own from that point forward. But we're going to come over here to this menu. We are going to click customer feedback. Now, I want to give you another helpful tip. If math is not your strong suit, you can actually open up and inspect the element, you can come to network, and then you can refresh this. And in our network, we will get a whole bunch of GET requests, and we will look through and find the one. Since this is called CAPTCHA, we're going to find the one that is labeled with CAPTCHA, and in there it will have for us the answer. And you see this request. We are going to look at the scoreboard at the end of this video, and I'll kind of talk through what this is, but we're going to go to this as soon as we solve this IDOR. But as we continue scrolling through and we're looking for the CAPTCHA right here, you can go to the response. Our answer is going to be 11. So it will solve for you whatever math problem you have. And that's the easiest way to get through these. And so our answer is going to be 11. It has our user name. We can leave a comment. I like to just leave hello world. We will give it a rating, and then make sure to intercept when you submit this. And so we'll hit submit, and now we have our user ID. If you want, you can go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out what to do from here. What we will do is we're going to send this to the repeater. We can come up here, open it up. We can send this request to make sure it goes through. It says it was created, so we have successfully left feedback. But we want to leave feedback as someone else. And so what we do is we can change our ID to, let's just go 14. Just pick an arbitrary number that's less than the one we were using or the one we were assigned. And then we can send it, and it says it was created. So now we should be able to turn off our proxy intercept, come back to our web application, and it tells us we successfully solved the challenge of forging feedback. So this is an example of an IDOR where we are leaving feedback under some other user's name. And now I want to go to the scoreboard real quick. This is where you can see the challenges, and you can see all of the challenges that are available on this web application. All right, I was playing around with the comment section in the products, and I realized you can actually leave feedback as someone else other than coming over here to our customer feedback. You can actually leave feedback from a different user right here on these products, and maybe you actually figured that out in the last one, and if you did, that's awesome. And if not, you can go ahead and try and solve this challenge on your own, and then we will go through it together. So if you want to give that a shot, you can go ahead and do that now. Okay, we are going to just open up one of the items that already has a review so that we have a name that we can leave feedback under. And what we'll do is come over and turn on our intercept and type in some kind of message, and then we will submit. We'll come over here and see if we can find it, and here it is. We can send this to our repeater. You can come over here and send this, and it says it was created. So we have the message, and then we have the author. So instead of having our name in here, we can put in Bender at Juice Shop. Was it dash? I think that is how it was written. And then we should be able to send this, and we'll actually just put in something else here and send it, and it says it was created. We'll turn the intercept off, and you can see here it was created under someone else's name, and it actually says we have successfully completed the challenge again. Okay, our next challenge is going to be one that we have talked about, but we have not actually seen, and I have not come across any vulnerable web apps to actually test this on and show it to you, but we have talked about it, and you might have to use some of your Googling skills, or just if you get stuck, follow along with the video and get a hint before you move on. But we're going to create an admin account, and this is something that is very possible that you will come across. It's not very common, but it does happen that you can find ways to create an admin account or escalate your privileges. So we're going to go ahead and make sure our intercept is off. And what I need you to do is go ahead and create an account and see if you can figure out how to get the account enrolled as an admin. And so you can go ahead and try that now. I think what I will have to do is log out, and I'm going to make a new account just the same. And I will come in here and go not yet a customer. This time we'll go john@john.com. And as soon as you get this done, we will turn on our intercept and we will register the account. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to send this to Repeater, and over here is where we'll work on escalating the privileges to an admin. So we'll send this, and just to get a response to see what we have here. So our role is a customer, and this tells us that we're going to need to change the role. And so I actually just did this a few hours ago. I was just working through the application, and I'm going to show you exactly what happened to me, because this will give you a really good idea of just the trial and error that we go through when we're testing applications. So I came in here, I typed in role just like this, and I typed in admin. And if you send it, since this user has already been created over here, we're actually going to have to change this to 1. And if we send it, we can see we've now created another user, but the role is still customer. And so I changed this to administrator, and it still didn't work. So I tried to change this to user admin, and then change this over here again, and we are still a customer. And I've tried user, I tried admin, I tried administrator, and finally what happened was I deleted this and I came up here and I tried to just move our input to see if that would make a difference. And I typed in admin just the same as before, and that looks good. And we'll change this to a 3, and then we will send it. And now you can see our role is now admin. So we have created an admin user. So if you take this user with this password that you just made, you can log in and browse the Juice Shop application as an admin. And so you'll actually see things like this in the wild. They're uncommon. You can actually go on HackerOne and read the hacktivity and see where people have actually got this to work. And you can see, just read the articles and read the submissions to observe how people have pulled this off. Some of them are going to be more complicated than this, but some of them really will be this simple. Okay, what I need you guys to do for this next lesson is go ahead and open up a new tab, and up here we're going to go to Portswigger, and you can go ahead and search for it. It should be the first one, and we're going to open it up, and we're going to move over to the login button. I've already created an account, and so go ahead, click on login, create an account. We're going to need it, especially in the coming lesson. So go ahead, click the login button, make an account, and I'll see you once you're logged in. Okay, once you have reached your login page, go ahead and click on Academy, and then go to All Labs. And once this loads, we're going to go ahead and scroll down until you find Business Logic. And I believe it's pretty far down in all of these labs. And so scroll down to our Business Logic errors, vulnerabilities right here. And we're going to be working through these right here. And so let's continue going forward. So these actually say solve because I already made the videos for these, and I realized that I never actually explained how you guys should get here and get to these labs before I started filming these videos. So I'm going to edit the video, and these are going to turn into unsolved. Okay, we are going to look at a few business logic vulnerabilities. And so these are very similar to the IDORs that we have been looking at. And so we're going to go ahead and just start here with this one right at the top. So you can go ahead and click on it, and we can look and see what exactly they have for us. And it says that it doesn't validate user input, and we're to buy this lightweight jacket. So you can go ahead and open up the lab, and this is where it brings us. It said we needed to log in, so we will go ahead and do that. And it gave us the login credentials, so we'll log in. And now we are supposed to buy this jacket. So I guess we can go ahead and view the details and add it to the cart. Let's actually come in here, turn the intercept on. We'll add it to the cart, and it tells us our price right here. I don't know exactly how much we're allowed to spend, but I think we should be able to. Let's see if we can make this a negative number. And we'll go ahead and forward that, and then we'll just turn that off. And it did not add it to our cart. We have $100 to spend on this jacket, and this jacket is way over $100, $1,300. So we'll go ahead and see if we can turn the intercept on, add this to cart, and let's just change our price here and see if that works. Okay, we're allowed to add it to our cart. So we have no need to apply a coupon, and we should be able to place our order. And it says we have solved the challenge. So things like this and business logic errors, IDORs and business logic errors, they're going to be things that you have the opportunity to find. These are pretty common that you'll find these business logic vulnerabilities. They happen when developers get lazy or they're just not really paying attention to what they're doing. I've actually seen really advanced developers make very simple mistakes that made their web applications vulnerable just because they weren't paying attention. And so you can find these. They're pretty common. I know there's at least one bug bounty hunter that this is all they do. They look through Burp, they look for business logic errors and what they can change just to find stuff that they shouldn't be able to. And vulnerabilities, these are pretty simple, and they do take a long time to find, but you can find them just by doing really simple things, by just changing numbers and inputs. Sometimes you will find stuff that has been encoded. It'll say, like, you'd have the lightweight jacket. Let's actually go back. I'll just show you. Sometimes we will add things to our cart like this, and you would have this, it'd say price, and it would look like this instead. We'll encode it, base64. You'd have this sitting inside your price instead of that number. And so what you have to do, if you see something like this, you'd have to take this and you would come to your decoder, or you can go to CyberChef and you can put it in and try and decode the price. Rarely going to see it where it's just a plain number, but this is way more common that you would just see a number here and that you would have to decode it. Sometimes these prices will be stored in places other than just something plain and simple like this, and so it's something that you're going to have to look for and poke around. They do take a while to find, but you can find them right off as a beginner who knows very little. And we're going to look at one more, and then I want to send you off on a challenge and see if you can find a business logic error on your own. Okay, we are going to continue with the business logic vulnerabilities. We're going to go ahead and open up this second one, and after this one I'm going to set you loose on a challenge. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and open this up. It looks like the same as the one before. We need to buy this jacket, and we have our login user right here, so we'll go ahead and log in, and we'll try and proceed with buying the jacket. Okay, here's our jacket, so we'll go ahead and view details. We'll add it to the cart. We're going to do the exact same thing we did in the last one, and I'm going to do it the exact same way by starting out. Oh, we don't have a price. So we got our product ID, our product, and here's our value. Let's get two of them, and I'm assuming we have the same amount of money in our cart as we had the last time to spend. So we'll go ahead and just put the negative sign in front of the 2, and we'll see if it allows us to put in a negative number. And we were. So in our cart, if we go look at it, it says we have negative $2,600. That means they are going to pay us. See if it'll go down by using these buttons. It does. So you wouldn't even have had to have done this in Burp. You could have just come over here and click this button, and it means they're going to pay us this amount of money. So when we place our order, we're definitely going to be able to buy our jacket, and our store credit is going to increase. Our price is not allowed to be less than 0. At least they have that in place. So we'll go ahead and, okay, made our cart empty. We're going to have to go back and put that back in our cart. So what I think we'll do is we'll add this to our cart as well. I'm not sure how many of these we're going to have to add. We'll go ahead and add one in, so that way we can buy our jacket, because that is our challenge. We'll go ahead and make sure that's negative. Forward, turn that off, and now we should have 2 negative items in our cart. It has to be above 0 but less than 100. So what we can do is we can just continue to subtract these. Oh, we'll add these. We'll go ahead and add these until we hit our price. Okay, it went back to 0 and removed it from our cart. So we'll go back over here. Back over here. Let's find something a little more expensive so we don't have to add that so many times. We'll go with the pool. Come to Burp, turn our intercept on, and this is exactly how this would happen if you were testing it. It's just going to be a lot of trial and error. We're going to need, I'm going to guess, at least 15 of these. We'll just go ahead and add them to the cart. We don't need to intercept that. And go back to our cart, and there our total is now $76. So what we did is we just added 15 of these pools, which got us close to $1,500, and then $1,500. And then what we did is we went ahead and added our jacket in at a negative price, because it wouldn't let us purchase anything at a negative number, and we only have $100 to spend. And so this should solve the challenge this time. So we'll go ahead and place our order. So I just wanted to add that you saw me make a lot of mistakes and a lot of trial and error in this video, and I want to thank you for being patient, but I also decided not to edit out all of the clicking that I had to do and the failures from this video, because I wanted you to see what it's realistically like as you test web applications, and as you're on the hunt, you will be doing what I just did the majority of your time, just trying to see if things work, and as they fail, you just go on and you try something new. and you try a different way to try and exploit the application or the vulnerability. And so I want to just encourage you that as you become frustrated or things aren't working, to just keep pushing on and see if you can find that vulnerability. Okay, it is time for your challenge. So if you navigate over to Juice Shop and get it running, what I want you to do is try and solve the challenge to where you actually are being paid $200 or $300 or $400 or more from this application. We just worked through 2 labs that are similar to this. So you can go ahead and try and solve this challenge, and when it's done, you should get the green bar at the top of your screen that'll tell you that you have completed the challenge. So I want you to go ahead and pause this video and give that a try. Okay, how did that go? We're going to go ahead and walk through this in the same manner in which I would solve this. So go ahead and add something to your basket, and then we'll check our basket. And then at this point, what I would do is I'd go ahead and turn the intercept on and walk through the whole checkout process and see if there's anywhere that I am able to modify, and see if I can modify this in any way, shape, or form. And what I think I'm going to do is I don't actually want to walk through and have you watch me put all of that information in just to solve this challenge. So we'll go ahead and see if we can actually modify this before we get there. So it says we have basket ID of 5. We're buying product number 4. Let's see if it will let us do what we did in the previous challenge and put in a negative amount. Let's try 99, turn the intercept off. It says we were able to add those to our basket, and they're going to pay us. That didn't work. Okay, they're going to pay us if we do that. So we'll go ahead and we'll try that again. $100 wasn't enough, so we'll come back to our products. We'll add to our basket. I forgot to turn burp on. We'll add this to our basket. We'll forward. Here's our quantity. I wonder if the rest of our content's at the end of this string. Well, we have our quantity, so what we'll do is we'll type in negative, and we'll do 200 this time. And we'll forward that and go to our basket, and that's more like it. We're going to get paid $400. So what you do at this point. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to show you a little bit of a walkthrough and explain SQL injection from the Nodus website. And I don't want you to actually go there or try and do this walkthrough. We're going to have plenty of practice when I have you create an account with PortSwigger and we walk through the PortSwigger SQL injection labs. And so for just the next few minutes, as we go through the Nodus example, and then I'm going to show you what the code actually looks like in a MySQL database. And I actually wrote a React app that's hooked up to a Node.js backend with MySQL as the database, so you can kind of see what the code looks like. Not that you need to memorize it, but it might help a little bit. Then we are going to move from there into PortSwigger and try to walk through the SQL injections together. So for the next few minutes, as I am on the Nodus website, just try and follow along and maybe catch a few nuggets of detail to understand. And then as I walk you through the actual back end of a SQL database, I hope that you can understand it and maybe even do a few of the PortSwigger walkthroughs with me, and then come back and then watch the MySQL database explanation again, and hopefully it will begin to click. This is one of those attacks that is really common, and so it's something that you should know. And up front, I'm just going to tell you, it might take you watching this and going through these labs several times to fully grasp the SQL injection, but that's okay. It takes time to become an ethical hacker. So with that, let's jump into it. Okay, we are going to begin working through some SQL injection. This is something that you can find. There are bug bounty hunters that dedicate their time only to looking for SQL injection. So if this is something that you find interesting, you can become really proficient at it, and this can be something that you primarily search for. So this is something I suggest learning, and learning well. It's easy to look for. You don't really need to know a whole lot about SQL databases in order to find these, but it does help. In the bug bounty world, it's actually a lot easier than if you find these on a capture the flag, because all you have to do
is put in a time delay to have a proof of concept. But in a capture the flag, you'll have to know a little more than what we're going to go over here. But for the sake of not going through and learning how to program in SQL databases, I think it would take just too much time. And so we're going to go through how to find these if you were to start looking on bug bounty programs. And I went ahead and opened up Natus 15. You don't have to go through this or work through this. I'm only going through this to show you what it's going to look like, and then we're going to actually go over to Portswigger and we're going to work through their practice SQL injections. And so just to give you an idea of what we're doing, when you come to a login form such as this one of the best things you should do and you should regularly check for is just to put in a single quote, and then you would hit enter and see what happens. And it says this user does not exist. What we're looking for is an error in the query. So I would go and I would do a double quote next, and I would hit check existence. And if you can hit an error, this is what we're looking for. And I'll actually show you in Burp, because this is where you're probably going to be sending your request through. So you'll hit check existence. You would send this to your repeater. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and change this so you can see it. And then you would hit send. And it says we get an error in query. What we're going to see here in a little bit is we're going to see this be a 501, an internal service network error. And that's usually what you'll see. Start finding these, but you will find what is called a blind SQL injection, and we're going to look at those a little bit later. So we still have the error. So what do we do with the error is we're going to start the enumeration process, but we're actually not going to do that here. I just wanted to show you kind of what we're looking for here so that you can look for it on your own in the first Portswigger lab and see what you can find if you can find it on your own. But just to give you a little more of an idea of what's going on in the background, the SQL database and the SQL language is going to look something like this. Select all from users. This will be where username equals, and this is what we input right here. So this would be our input. So what we did is we took this. This is what it'll look like. And this is what we can put in here. So you'd put your single quote or your double quote. And in the case of the Natus web application, what it has is something like this. And then here's where you're putting your query, where you're putting in to see if the username exists. And so when we put in another double quote, what happens is you break the query, and this produces the error right here, because it doesn't need to be there, it shouldn't be there in order for this to work in programming. And so that's how you break it. Okay, what we're about to go over is going to be a little advanced, but I think it will help you visualize what's going on beyond more than what I just showed you in the last video. So what I have up is actually MySQL Workbench. We have here just a simple database username I was testing. Here's an actual username and password. This is what a table will look like. And so in our query, we have select all from users, which is our schema, and then the table, which is users, that's not capitalized letter here. And so this is what a table looks like, and what's going to happen is this is running on a server, and when we send a query to the back end of a web application, it will reach out to the server and see if our query is true.
So I want to pause here because this is an update. I want to pause here and explain something a little better that I noticed I didn't do a very good job of. When you make a query to a database, the whole reason I wanted to show you the workbench is so that you could see these are the tables. So if I came over here and I said select all from blog post, then we're going to be grabbing the tables from inside the blog post. And so when we look at this, select all from users, this is showing all the databases. So this is a database, this is a database, and we're selecting from this database right here the users table. So the first one that we see right here, this is the database, and this is the table within the database. So select all from database and then table. This will be really helpful in the future when we learn to run SQL map and we need to know the context of SQL map. And so this is what it will look like, the code will look like. We have our database and we're querying our database and we are selecting all from the users table where the username equals, and then you can just pretend this is blank because this is where our input is going to go in here. So we're selecting all users from the table where our input is at, and the password is equal to the other input. And so this makes sure that we have an actual username, and then it makes sure we have a password that matches our username and our password from our table. And so what this looks like is over here we have our login here, and if we type something in and we type in a password and we hit login, it's going to say wrong username / password. And so if we come in here and we actually have our actual login made, it'll say we are logged in. And so when we do a SQL injection, basically what we're doing is sending in a request that we decide what it's going to be to the database, to the back end of the website that reaches out to our database server. So this is a pretty simple SQL injection that we're going to be covering here, and we're going to be going into union select statements after this video, which I think are more common than what we're about to go over. And so it's very important to learn the union select SQL injection statements. There are some bug bounty hunters that dedicate all of their time only to SQL injection. So I just made this, I'm shooting this video because I really want you to understand what's going on, and it'll make more sense. Don't worry if it doesn't make sense right now. You may have to come back to this video more than once and go over the union select statements labs on your own, and then come back to them after a day or two and just continue practicing them until you really have them down. And so one of the things that we're looking for when we do a SQL injection is, I'm going to inspect this so you can actually see this happen. We're going to have our console up, ignore my errors because my code is not perfect. When you put in a single quote, it will break this right here, and it will crash our server. So if we go ahead and throw that in, you see our connection is refused, and if you come over here you can see our application has crashed, which means I need to restart it. And now our application's running. And so when you send that, you'll have an internal server error, which is what we essentially just got right here. And so how we get past this is by actually giving it a statement that is true, so that it will give us back the first login in the database. It'll give us back the first username and password. And so we're going to make a true statement right now. And so what we'll do is we'll just throw in, it doesn't really matter, and then our single quote, and then we'll have or 1 = 1, and then we comment out everything after that, and then our password doesn't matter either, and it says we're logged in. But if we just have this right here, it'll tell us that we're not logged in because this isn't correct. So if we have this in here, what we're saying is this username right? Is this a true username? And the answer is no. You see we have wrong username and password. But 1 = 1 is always true. And then we comment everything out after this statement with this hash, so our password doesn't work. So you see how this is all in one line of code. This is all getting ran together. It's making this query all together, and what we're doing is essentially commenting out everything after our username, so the password doesn't even matter. So when I say we comment something out, we're commenting out everything after our statement. And so we throw this hash in here, and everything after it's commented out, the password doesn't matter. I think we can get by with no password because I don't have it set up right now that you have to have any characters in here, and it will come back as true. And this is what I'm talking about when we say SQL statement and we're querying a database or a server. Okay, there is one other thing I really want to show us. We're going to go over this again, exactly what I'm showing you right now in another couple of videos, but I think it'll be helpful to see it. So one other thing is, whenever you give it a database a true statement, it's going to come back without an error or saying it's a logged in. It's going to come back as true. So we just saw the statement that looked like this. We had our username, and then we had or 1 equals 1, and 1 equals 1 is always true, and so it comes back as logged in, or it comes back as true. There are other things we can do to get information from a database. See, we want these username and passwords, and we have an ID. So we have 3 columns here that have information in them. Let's say we know the table is users, and we want to know how many columns we have. What we'll do is to pull down something true. If we want to pull down the number of columns because we don't actually know how many there are, and we want to just find out some information from this database, you can actually come in here just like we did before, put in our random username that doesn't really matter, and then this is what I mean when I say a union select statement. So we're going to connect union to our statement here. So we have select all from users where username equals these things, and then we're going to add to it. We want to add a union select, if I can spell. We're going to select null, and this will tell us, is there one column in our table? And we send this, we're going to crash the server. I'll go ahead and send it so you can see we crash the server. I have to come over here, restart the server, and then I'm just going to give you, there's 3 columns. We know there are 3 columns. So we'll throw in null 2 more times, and this will say union select null null null, which is going to pull down how many columns there are. And if we send this, we got to crash the server because we didn't comment out the rest of the string that we were querying. So here we go. We'll log in. Now we have no undefined came back, which means we have no errors. So we'd know there are 3 columns, and so this is going to come up in one of our very first SQL injections that we're going to be doing on the Portswigger web application, and their labs that they have set up for us to practice on. And you feel free to continue practicing in there, but this is something we're going to be doing, and we're going to be going in a lot more detail, and you'll have to pay attention to this comment because it will change between 2 dashes without the semicolon based on the type of database that we're using. So I do apologize if this seems confusing. Hopefully it becomes more clear. It's in the top 10 most common vulnerabilities. I think it's in the top 5 most common vulnerabilities. Looking a little difficult right now because you've never seen it before. But by the end of this module in the course, if it's still unclear, you can go back and try it again and go back through this module, and it will become more clear, and you will memorize how to find these vulnerabilities. So with that, I will see you in the next video. Okay, we are here on portswigger.net. You can go ahead, I actually went ahead and logged in and created a new account. You can come in here and you can come up here, click sign in, and then create a new account. And then once you've done that, come back to the website and you will go to Academy. You can go ahead and click that and it'll load up, and then you'll go to all labs. This will take us to some of the labs we're going to be working through and the SQL injection. If you are having a hard time finding this exact URL right here, I will put a link to it in the description, or you can just type this out in order to get to all the labs. There's a whole bunch of them. We're not going to be going through all of them because some of them get kind of repetitive, and it has been a while since I have done these, at least a year. And so I actually thought what would be good, I'm not going to rehash any of these before we go through them, so you are going to see me make mistakes and you'll get to see my thought process, and you'll kind of just get to see how I work through these. And so if you want, you can go ahead and open up the first one, and then I like to open it up in a second tab over here, and they'll give you some instructions and kind of tell you
what you're looking for here. They'll actually tell you where to find some of the SQL injections so you don't have to spend your time clicking through the whole web application and trying to figure out where things are. And so they kind of point you in the right direction. And so we're looking for a SQL injection with the union attack. And so what this looks like, let's open this back up. So this is what their side of the query looks like. And then we would be typing in, you would close it off. In our case, it's going to be a single quote, union select, and then we're going to be looking for the number of columns and what we can find within this vulnerability. So we come over here and it says find the number of columns returned by the query. And there's a couple of ways to do this. I think I'll show you both. I think they both work in this program, and you can decide what works best for you. So you can come in here, and I actually want to first give you a chance. I'll show you kind of what we're looking for and see if you can find it on your own. So you can come in here, send one of these to your repeater, and see if you can find the SQL injection without any help. And it's okay if you haven't. We really haven't covered this a whole lot, but in the coming videos, we'll be able to do this multiple times over and over. And so you'll get the hang of what we're going through and what we're looking for. Okay, I'm going to send this to the repeater. I'm not actually sure where the SQL injection is even at. I think we'll try right here. Okay, that's what we're looking for. It is going to be right here. And so we're looking for this right here. This is what I was talking about in the last video, the internal server error. If you can produce this error, what you should immediately be thinking is there's going to be a SQL injection here somewhere. It is here somewhere. You just have to figure out how to exploit it. Challenge actually tells us to do is we're looking for the number of columns returned. And so we're trying to figure out how many columns are on the specific table. And so if you think of an Excel spreadsheet, you have rows and then you have columns. And what we're trying to do is figure out how many columns exist on the table. And when you're doing a SQL injection, we're going to be looking for passwords as we go through the Portswigger program, but there are a lot of other things you can look for, and we're going to get to those and exactly how to find them. Even though you're never really going to pull down actual information on a bug bounty program, I wanted to walk through, as someone who doesn't know how to program in SQL, what to do if you come across a capture the flag and you're trying to find specific things such as usernames or flags or passwords. And so we'll get to that in the coming videos, but now we have produced this internal server error, and so we know we are looking for the number of columns using the union attack. So we have our single quote which breaks the query, and then we type in union, and because we are sending this request, we have to send a plus for the space. If you don't have the plus in there, and you actually put a space in, it will break what we're trying to send. So union select, and then you put in here null, which is just nothing, and then you send it, and it comes back with nothing, and then you just hit comma, and then you put in null, and you'd send it, and it still sends us an error. So we put in null again, and we send it. And oh, what we forgot to do was you have to close out the rest of the query. So in here we have to put a dash dash, so that comments out everything after our statement here. So, and then we'd come over here and we'd put in null again, and it still says we haven't found the number of columns. And so it hit on the number 3, it came back, okay, so this statement would be true. So when the statement is true, it'll send us back a response. And so we have our response, which means there are 1, 2, 3 columns inside this lab we're working on. And so as we come into the next one, we'll read the instructions and we'll work through it. What I would like for you to do is go ahead and open up the second lab and click access to the lab. And I want you to go in here and do exactly what we did last time and see if you can remember how to find the number of columns in a SQL table. So you can go ahead, you can open that up, see if you can find it, and then if you want to try and figure out how to find the columns containing text, you can Google around and see if you can figure it out. If not, we're going to work through it now, and you will have the opportunity to practice finding columns containing text, as well as continuing to find the number of columns in a table in the future. So this isn't your only chance to try and practice this on your own. Okay, if you were able to pull down the number of columns, then you have figured out or learned what we went through in the last lesson. But if not, we're going to go ahead and work through this one again. So we'll come in here, click on one of these tabs, and we'll have a request sent, a get request, and then we will take it and send it to repeater, see if we can find an internal server error. Might not actually be in this one. Let's see. There it is. It's in this one. So we'll send this to repeater and put in our single quote. There is the error. So this is where our injection is going to be. And so if you weren't able to find it, you can go ahead and from here and see if you can solve the challenge and pull down the number of columns in this lab. So you can go ahead and give that a try now. What we do here, if you remember, is we type in union and our plus, then we select, and then we have our plus, and then we type in our first null value for the column, and then we comment everything else out after the request is sent. And it says we still have an error, and so we try this in. You actually don't have to have these in all caps. It's just kind of common practice for what people usually do, is have things in all caps. I'm not really even sure why, so if you know why, you can go ahead and let me know. So we pulled this down, we found 1, 2, 3 columns. And so if you made it this far, good job, congratulations. You have learned how to pull down the number of columns, but now we're supposed to pull down which column has text or which ones take text. And so you would put in your single quotes, and then you put in a string and then send it. And that one came back as an error, so we'll try the next column. And it is the second column contains text, and we'll go ahead and try the final column as well. Whoops. Okay, so it would be the center column is the one we would go after to try and pull down information, which is not actually available in this lab, but it is going to be available in the coming labs. So in the next lab, I want you to try and go through this, find the category of where you're going to find your error, and then try and pull down union, select the number of columns, which column contains text, and then we'll work through how to actually pull down the information from that column. All right, I did not notice after I had closed the video that the lab still said it was unsolved. And for those of you that is bothered when a lab goes unsolved or you want to see them all solved, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So we'll go ahead and I'll show you where to find that. If you want, you can go ahead and try and find it. I actually think this is a good challenge. I think you'll be able to find it. Just go ahead and go into perform the SQL injection, find the one that contains a string, and then look through the response and read through it and see if you can find the answer to solve the challenge. This here solves the challenge. for you. So now the challenge is solved, and I will see you in the next lesson. Okay, we are back with the third SQL injection challenge. You can go ahead and click on it and read through the prompt. I'm actually going to give you the challenge to see if you can pull down which column or columns contain characters and will accept a string. And then I'm going to walk you through pulling down data from the table. And then I would suggest practicing, so after we go through it on this lab, to try and go through it again without the video before you move on to the next lesson, so that you can continue practicing things as you see it happening. So we'll go ahead and enter into the lab, and it's going to be pretty much the same. So if you want to go ahead now, I'm going to wait a few seconds and you can pause the video and see if you can complete the challenge and pull down which column or columns contain a string before we go ahead and continue learning how to enumerate the table columns. So by now this should be pretty familiar to you. We're going to come in here, we're going to look for our request that I apparently passed. We'll send this to repeater. We'll make sure that we get our internal server error, and then we'll try our union select attack and send it and see how many columns we pull down. So there's only 2 in this lab. And so what we'll do now is we're going to pull down information from the table. So I'm going to show you how to do that, then I'm going to give an explanation of the best way, if you don't know any SQL or you don't know how to write any SQL statements, how to find table names if you find this in a capture the flag and you don't want to go through the long process of trying to figure out the table names through writing SQL statements. But before we get there, I'm going to show you, this is what we'll do. We have 2 columns. You'll see, check to see if they'll accept a string, and that one does. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it, and that one does as well. That means both these columns have information within them. And let's say there was a third column. If we were to write our SQL statement, we would have to include all 3 columns because the query has to be considered true. You would just leave the null statement in here. And we're going to see some of these in the coming videos. And just to give you an idea that you can go ahead and try and do these, you would do null plus the username. See, this is what you have to do. You'd leave this as an empty column. But in our case, we don't have 3 columns, so we're going to just go with the ones that we do have and the ones that will accept a string. And so we're going to pull down usernames, and then we're also going to look for the passwords in the table. So we would look for the password, and this should pull down for us the username and the password from the users table. And see, this looks like a user, this looks like a password, this looks like a user, this looks like a password, and this would be the administrator, this would be his password. So in our response, we have pulled down the usernames and the passwords that are within the table, and this would give us access. If we wanted to, you could log in as these people. If this was a real website, you would have access to their accounts. You can go ahead and turn your proxy off so that the web page loads, and then you will have the usernames here and the passwords, and you can come over to log in and you can give them a try and see if you're able to log in and see if this solves the challenge. There, that one solved the challenge for us. So with that, I want you to go ahead and see if you can figure out the next challenge without any help. See how far you can get and if you can make it through. We're going to skip over this 4th lesson and we're going to jump into the 5th lesson. And you can go ahead and open this up and read through it. This time we're going to be in an Oracle database, and so we're going to be trying to pull down the version that it is running. And so with this tip, we can see there's a built-in table called Dual. So they actually give us the table name this time for us to run through. And I think with what you've learned so far in the SQL injection cheat sheet, you should be able to figure out how to solve this challenge. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video now and try, you can go ahead and do that. If not, we're going to walk through the solution together. So we'll open up the page. We'll go ahead and turn our proxy on. And this should all be familiar to you by now. So we're sending that to repeater. We make sure that we get our internal server error, and then we move on just like we have before. So we type in union, select, and then we'll check for a single column. But if you remember, the table name we were told is called Dual. And so we can send that, and we still have an error, so let's try for a second column. And we see that there are 2 tables, or 2 columns, and the table name of Dual. So we'll come in here and make sure they can receive a string, and they can. So what we'll do now is we're looking for, if you remember, the version name. We're trying to pull down the version name inside the response. So we'll come back to burp, and since these can receive string, we type in here banner. And then if you remember from the previous lesson, if we have multiple columns that can receive a string and we're not actually going to use one, we have to leave it with null, so that way that column receives an input. We just don't want anything from it yet at this point. And then for Oracle, the way you pull down a version is $, and then just the word version. And we'll see if that sends it for us. I saw this change in the background to solved. So that gets us our information that we need. And so we should be able to scroll through here and we find it right in here. Okay, in this lesson we're going to go ahead and open up this one, the MySQL and Microsoft. I will just go ahead and tell you they are trying to pull a quick one on us, because instead of using the typical dash right here that we use in Microsoft to close out or to cancel or to comment out everything after your query, you will use a hashtag, and that will stump me. I will come across that and I can sometimes not figure out what's going on, and I can spend a significant amount of time trying to figure it out, and in the end I was using the wrong comment. And so that's one thing to be aware of. And in this lab, we're going to inject an attack. We're going to pull down the type and version of MySQL that's being used. And so this is very, very similar to the last one. And when you go ahead and open up the lab, we are looking to make the database retrieve the string. So I'm actually not entirely sure how to get this to say solved. So we're gonna be figuring this out together for, I guess, the first time. So I'm guessing what we're supposed to do is use our union select attack, pull down the response that we get right here, and try and find the version, which will look something like this, that it's using, and then go back and put it into a string, and it should give us the problem solved up here. So if you would like to go ahead and give this a try on your own, you can go ahead and do that, and I'll give you a few seconds and you can pause the video and then we'll walk through it together. We're going to continue the same way we have been. Turn on the proxy, pick a category, send it to repeater, turn the proxy off. I'm going to lower this so when it comes through as solved we can see it. We'll see if we get our error, and we do. Try it for null, and then don't forget the way we comment out is with the hash or the pound symbol. It has more than one column, and it has two columns. So what we will do is we will make sure they can both receive a string, and they do. And so the way we pull down the version in Microsoft MySQL is a little different than the way we did it with the Oracle one. We'll go with the two @ symbols. You type in version, and if you looked through the cheat sheet, you would know this is how you pull down the version for Microsoft. And so what we do is we type in null, because you have to have both columns filled, and then we'll send it. And we came back with a positive response, and so we'll look and see if we can, oh, it solved it for us. It already said solved. I thought we were going to have to find a version number and send it through as a string right here. Okay, at this point, things are going to become progressively more difficult in pulling down usernames and passwords, especially once we get to the blind SQL injection, because this is something that we have not seen before. So we're going to be preparing for that by going into this lab right here. You can go ahead and open it up, and we are going to be pulling down the username and passwords, and we're going to log in as the administrator to solve this challenge. I think you can go ahead if you want and practice pulling down how many columns there are and which ones actually receive a string, and you can go ahead and pause and do that if you would like. If not, we're going to go ahead and solve it together. So we'll turn on the interceptor, and we're going to be seeing some new information that we haven't seen before. It's going to seem strange, but I'm going to do my best to explain exactly how the SQL statements work, the default tables, and what we're looking for. So we'll go ahead, send that to repeater, turn that off, send that, make sure we get our error, determine how many columns there are. String, and they do. So at this point, things are going to be a little bit different than what we've been doing. We're actually going to be trying to pull down some information from these tables. And so what we do, the first thing we have to do is figure out the table name. So if we have a grid like an Excel sheet, you have your columns that are going up and down, your rows that are going across, and the name of the table. The first thing we have to know is the table name in order to request the columns and then individual cells within the table for us to pull down that contain the usernames and the passwords. So we have our union select, and then we come in and we type in table name. And so this is what we're looking for. If you remember, we're replacing one of the null values with the table name. Then we leave the second one with the null value because we're not going to be pulling anything from it just yet. And then we go from the information schema. And this right here, the information schema dot tables, and this is a default table that you're going to have on every SQL database. So that's how I know this is there. If you were to go into SQL and you were to open it up, you're going to have several default tables, the information schema tables. This is default, it's always going to be there. And so this is how we know what to put in for our injection. Then we send it, and we have an error, which means I'm guessing I have a typo schema There was my typo. And we pull down and we'll look through our response and pull down the table names that we have here, and there are a bunch of table names. But if you remember, the one we're looking for, we're trying to log in as the administrator, so we're going to need the users table right here. Users, this is the name of users table. I would suggest copying it and having a text file open, because we're going to need this information. So now we're going to look for the column name, so we can delete this. So the table column is what we're looking for now. So we're going to, actually, I deleted the wrong part of the request. Instead of the table, we're looking for the column name. And we're going to leave this in the information schema dot columns. And this looks right. And now we're going to add to this, because now we're looking for the columns from a very specific table. So now we add a plus, and we'll say where the table name equals, and then our users table that we just pulled down. So we'll type in table name, and then we do equals, and then our double quotes. I think I've actually already got that copied still. And then we paste in our users table. So what we have going on is our union select. So everything that's coming before this doesn't really matter. We're adding a query onto it. We're looking for the column name. We have our second value retrieving null, because we're not looking for anything from it just yet, from the information schema, which is one of the defaults within the SQL database. And we found the table, so now we're looking for columns where the table name, so we're pulling down the table name, equals users. This is going to give us the columns within the table that is named users with some random characters. And so we should be able to send this. So now we should be able to scroll down, and we have column names. So the passwords column and the users column. And so now we should be able to change our query and pull down the passwords and the username. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these. We have the username and the password columns. These are the ones that we are interested in. And now we're going to change our union statement. So now, instead of pulling down a column name, we are going to be looking for the username and the password. So we can delete our null, and we can insert the password column, and here we'll put in the username column in the first slot instead of the column name. And we're looking for the username, the password. From users. Let's see if that works for us, and it does. So we should be able to come through now to solve the challenge. We have the administrator and another user, so we can copy the administrator. We can come back to our lab. Remember, to solve it, we have to log in as the administrator. We can paste in the administrator, and then we can come back to Burp and copy our password, and this should solve the challenge for us. Okay, now that was very, I don't want to say complicated, but it was a big jump from where we have been coming and where we've been coming from. And so as we get ready to go into blind SQL injections, it's going to become even more complicated. So you might have to go through this lab several times and make sure that you really understand what's happening. Make sure that everything that's built up to this point is working together. The next lab, I believe, is an Oracle lab. Okay, so you can try and solve this one. It's going to be similar to the one that we just did, only you can use the SQL cheat sheet. We'll go ahead and walk through it again just so we can have one more practice before we get into the blind SQL injections, because these are going to use everything we just learned in this lesson plus quite a bit more. We're going to be looking at new aspects within Burp and exactly how to use the intruder tool within the Burp program. So I think it's very important at this point, if I can stress it enough, we're going to have quite a bit of practice going into the blind SQL injection, but it's a lot more difficult than what we just went through if you've never done this before. So go through this again if you have to. Make sure you understand what's happening and what's going on. I want you to try and solve this lab completely on your own. I'm going to give you 2 clues before you start, but other than that, you have already learned everything necessary for solving this challenge. We'll go ahead and open up the lab, and if you remember, when we do go through an Oracle database, you have to use from dual when you're trying to pull down the number of columns within the table. And so since we're looking for we're going to have to log in as the administrator, that should give you a clue to at least how many columns are going to be within the table. And so the other clue I wanted to give you is if you go ahead and open up the SQL injection cheat sheet, when you pull this open, you are going to be using from all tables instead of information schema. So in the last lesson, we used information schema as our default. Well, that's not what we're going to be using this time. This time we're going to use all tables. Everything should be the same as it was last time. The only difference is we're going to be using all tables instead of information schema. And so you can go ahead with that information and try and solve this lab. And if you have gotten stuck, we're going to go ahead and walk through this together now. So the first thing is turn your interceptor on. We're going to go through the normal procedures here. We're going to send it to repeater, turn the intercept off, and make sure that we have our error appear, which we do. So this is telling us we have a SQL injection. We are going to pull down the number of columns. I know there's at least 2 because we were told that we have to log in as the administrator, which means there's at least a username and passwords column. So we have at least 2 of those. And then we'll go ahead and send this, and it comes back. So there are 2 columns. Both of these are going to have to retrieve a string in order for us to pull down a username and password. So I'll go ahead and check it anyway, but I know it's going to come through, and it does. Now this is where we are going to start practicing what we learned in the previous video. So if you remember, the first thing we have to do is find the table name. So we can go ahead and type in our table name, and this is from. Last time we used information schema, but if you remember, this time we're going to use all tables, and there we go. So this should give us all tables. If you remember, last time there was a bunch of them, but we are looking for the users. I'm guessing this is the one that we need. History. We're going to go ahead and pull down the information. Well, this is we'll grab a couple of them just in case, but I think that's going to be the right one, so we'll keep this one. This is the one we're going to roll with. Now what we'll do is we'll have to come back up here, if you remember, and change. Now that we have the table name, we're going to go ahead and insert this and see if we can find the column name. So we'll change this to column, and we'll leave our null, and it is from. And this time we're going to input in our table into our injection. So we have from all of our tables, and we're looking for, at this point, the columns where it is equal, the table is equal to the table name that we just pulled down. So we have where, and then we'll type in our table name, and then equals our table name. And we'll go ahead, look this over, and then we'll send it. And it came through. Now we have to hope that we have our columns. So we have a password column pulled down, and we have the username. Okay, now we have to change our injection one more time. So this time we'll be getting rid of our null value, and we're going to be putting in first our username, and then we're also looking for the passwords, which will come from our second column, and this is going to come from our table name, which I actually think we delete this, we'll delete that, and we'll delete this. And we have an error, comma, and we have pulled it down. So this should have our usernames and our passwords in it, just like the last one that we walked through. Here's the administrator and the password. And so if you remember, we have to log in to actually receive the solved lab up here. So we'll go ahead, paste that, and we'll copy and paste this and send it. And we have solved the challenge, and we are ready to start the blind SQL injection. We are going to go ahead and open up this lab. While it's loading, I thought I would just tell you this is going to be, the next couple of labs are going to be a little more difficult, and I think that you should practice them just to get this ingrained into your mind, what exactly is happening, because we're going to be adding quite a few new steps, but they actually let us skip what we have been practicing, because in the instructions they give us that we are going to be working with a table called users and two columns, usernames, or the username and passwords. So we don't have to go find the table and we don't have to find the columns, but we do have to still log in as the administrator to complete this lab. So you can go ahead and open up this lab, start this lab exactly how we normally would, by opening up one of these tabs, forwarding it, and then sending our request to the repeater, because what you're looking for is a request with this tracking ID. You need that tracking ID because that's where the SQL injection is going to be. So we'll send this, and you can send it a few times. And what I'm looking for is this content length. I want to make sure that it does not change. And sometimes you will send this on some web applications and it will change every time, no matter what you do, the exact same GET request. But for us, in our case, it stays the same, which makes this lab much easier to solve. And when you have this tracking ID, you can also check it as well for the SQL injection. And so you send it and you can see the content length has changed. So it's 4906, and you send it and now it has changed. This tells us there is a possibility of a SQL injection. So what we're looking for is what has actually changed in our response. Here, what I like to do when I come across a different response is to copy this and take it to a text editor. I think it's easier to read through and to look at, and I also can search, which we are going to do right here. So when it comes back without any modifications, we have the, let's send this again, we have the welcome back is on the page. When we put in our single quote to try and provoke an error, the welcome back is gone. So you can see we have 0 matches right here. And so with our 0 matches, we want to send a true statement to make sure that we can really add on to this query. So we go or 1 equals 1 and then comment this out. That comes back as true. So we know that we can give some kind of request and see what comes back true, what is actually true and is on the database will come back with this welcome back, which is what we're going to have to pay attention to. And so because we've already been told what the table name is and the column names, we can go ahead and start to look for information from this table. So we'll type in our usual union select, and this is where it changes, because we're going to now add a character into our query. So we're going union select from, and then we're going to go to our users table where the username is equal to, and then remember we were told we need to log in as administrator, so the username we're looking for, and we are going to send this and see if it comes back as true, and it does. So we have this, and now what we can do is we can actually add on to it, and we can look for the length of the password. And so you can come in here and you can look to see how long the password is, and you can pull down the length of the password, and you can come in here and you can go plus and plus length, and then we add in the password, and then you would add is it greater than, and then you can start right here and you can start sending to see is it greater than 1, is it greater than 2, is it greater than 3, and you can send this to the burp repeater and just continue seeing is it greater than and looking through this. What I am going to do is I'm actually going to skip this process for the sake of time, because we're going to have to go into a burp intruder and start looking for the actual password. And so what we're going to do is we're going to send this query over to the intruder and see what we can pull back. So I'm going to go ahead and take this query here, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to add into it the characters that we're looking for. And so you would add in that you're looking for the first character and only one character inside the query, and then you're going to start with the character A. Now at this point, I'm sure if this is the first time you've ever seen anything like this, it looks very strange, and it is going to feel really strange doing things like this. It's new and it's kind of confusing, so we'll send this not to repeater, to intruder. And so we have this new string that we're sending. So we have our normal union select, and then we have a string from users where the username equals administrator. So we're looking on the table name users under the column username for the administrator's password, and we are looking for the actual password at this point. And this actually, I just noticed, we're not looking for the length of the password, we're going to be looking for the substring. So we'll come over to intruder, we'll look at our positions because we've already sent this over here. We'll clear where it wants us to start querying, and we are looking for the substring in the password. And so we will go ahead and set this up. What we do at this point is, as we set up our payload, you will add the whatever those symbols are to tell it this is where we want to shoot through, or we're going to use the cluster bomb. So this is where we're going to be going through and sorting to make sure we have the right characters, and then we'll add right here, because if you remember, this selects the first character, and then it's going to go through the first character for all of the characters that we give it, but then we want it to go through the second character as well, and then the third and the fourth and the fifth, until we reach the end and we have the password. I don't have the professional version of Burp on this system, and so this is actually going to go really slow, and once it starts I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so you don't have to wait for it to pull down the password, because it will actually take a while without the professional version of Burp. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to set up our payloads. And so if you remember, payload 1 is going to go to this position, and payload 2 is going to go to this position. So the first payload, we're going through numbers. So we will find numbers, and we're going to go from 1, and this is when I guess it would have been helpful. I'm just going to go really far. This is when it would have been helpful to see how many characters were in the password, so you would have known how far you needed to go. And then we're going to go by a step of 1. So it's going to go up 1 character once it goes through all 30 characters. And then position 2, we are going to be going through the alphabet. See if it has the alphabets in here for us. I believe it does. Manually add these in, it would be a lot easier to go through these without having to do this, but I will edit this out. Alright, I believe we have all of the characters added in. What we can do is we can go ahead and start the attack, and we can say okay. And now it is going to go through and start working through all of those characters. So position 1 and A, is position 2 and A, is position 3 and A, and it's going to go through and check every character for each position until one returns true. Okay, I have gone ahead and cut the video in the middle of where we were after starting the attack, and you can see that it's been running and we've pulled down some of the characters that we've needed. One of the things that might be helpful, if you copied exactly what I had typed in into the payload or into the query right here, I actually had a error, and I had to go through and change that and fix it. And then that ran for a little while, and then also my computer fell asleep while running this, and it closed out my query, and so I had to restart it. And so this has been running for what feels like forever. And so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to stop it here, and I'm going to show you a little more manual way. And it's also a lot faster, because if you can see, it's sending one query each time to the server, and it's very slow, anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds. And it's because we've sent so many. And this is one of the things Burp does in order to get you to buy Burp Professional, so that it'll send them really fast. So they've throttled this down, but I'm going to show you a way that you can kind of get around this and send your queries a lot faster. Before we start that, I kind of wanted to show you our positions just in case it wasn't clear. Remember, in our query we are selecting from the users, the table users, where the username is just the column, and we're looking for the name of administrator inside the password column. And so we're sending, this is the first character in the query, so this would be position number 1, and then it'll change and it'll go position number 2, and then position number 3, and it will send A all the way through however many we set those positions, 1 2 3 4 5 6, to see if an A comes back as true in any of those cases. And if it comes back true, we'll see something like this. You can see the length has changed and the welcome back is present in the response. And then once it goes to all of position 1 for all of the alphabet, it will go to B, and then it will start over and it'll continue and it'll go through like that. This is a very automated way. We don't have to really do anything. We just set it up and let it run. But if you don't have Burp Professional, this can take a very long time. And one thing before we go ahead and I show you how to organize this to find the password, is that in order to get this welcome back to show up, what you do is you can check in your response, and you can have your welcome down here, and if you can see these, it matches. The welcome has come back, which means it's true, and we have a match. For these down here, it is not true, and there is no match. And so we can sort out the true characters that exist and in which position they exist. So there's a G in position 2. There's a G in position 15. We have a K in position 8, and so on. And so we can know this is where there's characters and this is how it's true. But in order to get this welcome up here, you have to go into your options. You will come down, so it'll start you up here. You'll scroll down to grep match. You will clear what's in here and you will add welcome. You'll get a little pop-up. You'll just click OK. And then it will bring you back to your results and it will look like this. And what you do is you just click this and you click it again until we have the arrow facing down, and it will have all of the characters there for you as it runs. Now, the way I like to sort out the password is to have a text file open, which is right here. We have our text file. We'll delete this and we'll delete this and we'll paste this in. So what we have here, we'll also delete these because these are just our query numbers on how many GET requests were sent to the server. And I think the less numbers we have, the easier this will be to understand. So this, if you remember, let's open this back up and have our text file. This is the position from payload number 1, and this is the character that has come back in payload number 2. So what you would do, so let's say this is what we've brought back, and the query is finished, even though we know it's still running and it's going to take 5 more hours for it to finish running. So what we'd do is we'd have our password equals, and you'd come here and you'd go, okay, position number 1 is I, and then we'd look for 2. 2 is O. Position number 3 is a K, and then position number 4 is an I, and position number 5 L, and position 6 is a G, and then you'd go along and you would just continue doing this all the way through. So we go 6, and then we go 7, and then 8 is a C, 9 is N, and by the time you've gone through all of this, this is your password. And so we were told that the username is administrator and the password is what we're pulling down right here. And we'd come over here, we'd go to our lab, and this is where we would come in, we'd click login, you would use administrator, and then this password that we have just pulled down. So if you want to let your intruder run for ever, because it is really slow, especially once you get past about position, after you get past request number 30 to 35, it really slows down. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Okay, we are going to look at the blind SQL injection with time delays. So what you'll do is, if you find what you believe to be a SQL injection, you will inject a time delay, and they're pretty simple. But I also want to look at the cheat sheet because they're going to be different, and we're only going to be looking at this one right here. The blind SQL injection with time delays is really simple to the one with conditional responses, which we just looked at. The only difference is you would be running a case then statement, which if you're a programmer, it's like if then, and you're going to be saying if this is true, then sleep, and rather than if this is true. So with the cheat sheet, these are all going to be different. So you'll have to run this to get your program to sleep. For your delay with Microsoft, it's going to be like your syntax is going to look like this. For PostgreSQL is going to look like this, and MySQL is going to look like this. And so each one is going to be a little different, and you might have to just try each one and see what comes back for you. Okay, so this is, we're going to have to solve the lab, we need it to sleep for 10 seconds, which is kind of a long wait, but 10 seconds feels like forever when you're waiting for a response to a GET request. So we will go ahead and turn the interceptor on. Open this up. I think I clicked in the wrong spot. Oh, there's a tracking ID. We have one right there. And this will look, let's see if it says it's blind, so it's not going to have anything for us. I'm actually going to go ahead and go to an item. so that I know I'm in the right spot and you guys don't have to watch me fumble around like you are right now. So we'll go ahead, send that to repeater, and the SQL injection that we're looking for with the time delay is the PostgreSQL right here. So what we'll do is we'll use this syntax right here, the PG sleep 10, and we're going to have to concatenate it to our query. So it's just two types, which is just above your enter key or your return key if you're on a Mac. And then you just type in the syntax exactly like you just saw. And then we don't forget to comment out the rest. And that should take 10 seconds for our response to come back. And once that response comes back, we should have a solved up here. And so the time delays are really simple. They're really easy to run, and this is how you do it. I'm not sure why that didn't come back as solved. Maybe we have to go ahead and forward this. There it is. There's the solved. So they're really simple to run. They're really easy proof of concept. You can change this to 5 seconds if you're impatient like I am, and wait just 5 seconds instead of 10, but you have to do 10 here to solve the lab. Okay, we are ready to start directory traversal. We have talked about this just a little bit earlier when we talked about navigating through files, and we talked about going through files such as this. So we would cd into the desktop and it changes us. We change into that directory. And so we're able to go between directories and go into different files. And the way we go backward, if you remember, if I wanted to go back to my home, I would just go back one directory and that takes me back. A good way to practice this, and maybe you've done this earlier, is to open up your home folder and just up here in your little search bar, you can practice going backwards, or you can practice going forwards. And so we would just be going forwards like this, and then we can go forward again and we can go into our desktop. And then if we wanted to go back, we would just do 2 dots and a slash. And so in directory traversal, we will be going through files only in our browser. So we would be going backward through here. And we talked about this a little bit in the previous lessons. And so we're going to go ahead and open up our Portswigger in our labs, and you can scroll down until you find the directory traversal. And then we're going to walk through a few of these manually, and then I'm going to show you a tool that does this for you. And I will pull up a directory traversal that is found on HackerOne, just so you can look at it and you can see just that these are not something that's lost out there and somebody's found them all. Actually, recently, I would say within the last 2 years, someone found a bunch of directory traversals. They were able to pull down files that they should have never had access to on the Department of Defense. And so if you would think of any organization that's going to have good security, you would think it would be the DoD. And these were found recently within the last 2 years, directory traversals on the DoD. And so it's out there and they happen. I've actually found a few of them, and we'll go through them manually, and then I'll show you a easy way to fuzz through with a tool that will actually pull down and tell you where a website is or a web application is vulnerable, and exactly which exploit they used to prove it's vulnerable. So we'll do that after we go through some of these manually. Okay, we are ready to go ahead and open up our first lab. And you're going to be able to see just how easy these are to find manually, as I think they're really simple, and anyone can go and try these with really knowing very little about how the web application or locating files works in general. You can pretty much find these straight off your very first day. So we'll go ahead and access the lab and turn this on, turn on our lab. And while that's opening, there's
a few different ways to look for these. Probably the most common is going to be up here in your address bar. You'll come up here and this is where you'll search for them. And I'll just go ahead and show you. What you would do is you'd pull this open and you'd hit your slash and you'd go dot dot slash dot dot slash, and then you would hit enter and see if it can take you back any files. But it is not going to work for us in this bar. We're actually going to have to use burp for this. And so we'll go ahead and turn it on, turn our intercept on, and we'll view details. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is send a few of these requests to repeater, because I'm not actually sure where exactly we're going to find the traversal. So we'll go ahead and send that to repeater as well. And I think that's it. So we'll go ahead and open this. And so if you remember how to go backward in our files, we'll actually start with the first one we sent. We'll go ahead and delete this. And so we're looking for the product ID, and you would go dot dot slash dot dot slash. And then what we're looking for, if you remember in the lab description, is the Etsy password. And so we just type in etc slash password, and then you can send it. And it says we get a bad request. And so we'll go a couple more and see what happens. Okay, so we're getting a bad request. What we'll do is we'll go over to our other get request, and we'll go ahead and do the same thing. I like to go ahead and start out just like this, and then add to the path traversal as we go. And so I just